home to powerful noble houses, and a man who would become the infamous Count Dooku. Welcome to Sereno, a planet of aristocratic elegance, verdant wilderness, and hidden darkness. But how did a world built on tradition and wealth twist its promise, producing one of the galaxy's greatest Sith icons? Sereno sat in the grid P5 of the Dastan sector, positioned at the dawn of the Hydian Way, a major hyperspace route linking to Coruscant, Yavin, Mandalore, and Top Raha. Its unique position made it both a gateway and prize in galactic politics. Torrential rains, pristine forests, sprawling plains, and mineral riches, Sacanium and Sereno silver, belied its outer rim status, with resources that rivaled core worlds. Under the Great Houses, led by House Sereno, the planet ran on feudal precision and noblesse oblique. Legends of 7 noble houses expelling an ancient Sith empire, capturing a corrupted Tirataka dragon that became buried below, eventually part of Sereno's cultural lore. Their capital, Curania, centered political might. Their gem-studded castle on a cliff became the seat of power, and while many see the galaxy's core as the real center, Sereno's control of the Hydian Way meant control of commerce, influence, and destiny. But how did a peripheral world build an aristocratic society with such deep political roots? In legends, there are several counts of Sereno, ruled by council of 6 wealthy noble families. Essentially, Sereno's power was inherited, but maintained through wealth, trade, and tradition. By the High Republic era, the planet was already shining. Exports of luxury goods, strategic defense, a multi-million population that included humans, Chiss, and Twi'leks. They embraced charm, diplomacy, and feudal pride, traits that made Sereno famous, and Dooku inevitable. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Sereno and its history, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss our weekly Star Wars Deep Lore videos. Now back to the archives. By 102 BBY, Count Gora ruled and had 3 children, Ramil, Genza, and the secret Force-sensitive toddler, Dooku. Believing Force users dangerous, Gora abandoned young Dooku in the jungle, letting fate and the Jedi decide his future. Gora's regime was marked by unrest, military dismantled in favor of droids, worker layoffs, protests at Countess Anya's funeral, where only Dooku intervened to prevent a massacre, revealing his heritage. The tension climaxed in 42 BBY, when his brother Ramil usurped control, hired pirates, and triggered the invasion of Sereno. Jedi Masters Dooku, Sifo Dyas, and Lene Costana returned to aid locals, but it was young Dooku, commanding a Tirataka, who saved them by killing Ramil and slaying the dragon to regain control. Dooku's rise to Count, forged by blood and betrayal, gave him a political platform and personal edge over his peers. Was Dooku shaped more by family dysfunction or by aristocratic destiny? At a public summit, he used Sacanium wealth to rebuild the war-ravaged Curania, positioning himself as a savior among Sereno's disillusioned elites. By 24 BBY, he left for Sullust to expand industrial ties and secretly align with the Sith's Darth Sidious. Eventually, he founded the Confederacy, moved the Senate, and cemented Dooku's identity as a leader, businessman, and ideological extremist. During the Clone Wars, Sereno became a pillar of the Separatists, shielded by warships, yet funding war with looted credits and Republican spoils. Castle Sereno, perched above Corania, became the political and spiritual center of his movement. It was the site of duels, manipulations, and Sith rituals, where he met Ventress, trained Opress, and orchestrated the deaths of Jedi spies. He used his capital as a command post, sending Grievous on missions, receiving Sith communications, and maintaining control over the Outer Rim. On screen and in novels, Dooku tortured Jedi like Quinlan Vos in the prison known as the Spike, a dark echo of Sereno's aristocratic ruthlessness. Was Sereno a sanctuary or a twisted stronghold of power? Despite being under constant threat, Sereno avoided on-planet battles. Its defenses held strong during Republic campaigns. After Dooku fell at Coruscant in 19 BBY, Imperial forces ruthlessly seized Sereno. Orbital bombardments leveled cities, including zones around Castle Sereno. Thousands died, and survivors fled into forests. Clone Force 99, the Bad Batch, tried to steal off Dooku's war chest, including legends of orbital bombardment and castle occupation by Imperial mobs. Population plunged. Romar Adel hid amid ruins. The planet lost its aristocratic sheen, but pockets of nostalgia remained. In the years that followed, Sereno became unstable, briefly controlled by smugglers, mercenaries, or rogue Imperial factions. Scenes in The Bad Batch show the devastation and the quest to protect history against Imperial theft. But how does a once proud world endure when stripped of legacy, resources, and power? Sereno didn't quickly recover. Even after the Republic's resurgence, nobility remained tarnished, but a new wave of restoration began, stitching together heritage from ruins. Even cleared of Sith influence, Sereno's wild legacy remained, especially in legends. The Tirataka dragon, once a Sith-corrupted weapon who broke free and was trapped underground. This beast became a Serenian emblem of rebellion and hope. Sacred silvers and Sacanium veins continued to underpin Sereno's economy. From strategic crossroads to Sith stronghold, Sereno's journey is a mirror of Count Dooku himself. Elegance assaulted by ambition, fate betrayed by power. Is a world doomed if its greatest hero falls villain? Or can heritage transcend tragedy? Sereno survived the Empire, but its future lies in balance, reclaiming its culture while shedding its arrogance. But what do you think? Have you been inspired by its culture or terrified by its legacy?
What happens when a world sacrifices its own son to survive? Why would an entire civilization hide its true existence beneath an icy facade? What ancient weapon forced the proud Chiss to retreat below ground? And how did the chilling secret become the key to the rise of one of the galaxy's most brilliant tacticians, Grand Admiral Thrawn? Today, we're revealing the secrets of Scylla, the frozen throne of the Chiss ascendancy. From the catastrophic war that dimmed its sun, to the hidden world beneath the ice, and the silent politics that shaped Thrawn's destiny. This is the story of a planet that sacrificed everything to survive. Long before the Republic, Scylla was not the frozen wasteland we picture today. It orbited a stable blue-white star and boasted thriving cities across its surface. Fields of crimson moss blanketed mountain valleys, rivers snaked between glacial peaks, feeding into sparkling oceans teeming with life. Scylla was once a world of colour, of balance, and above all, of secrecy. The Chiss have always guarded their borders fiercely, avoiding outside contact whenever possible. But back then, at least, they did so beneath open skies. So what changed so catastrophically that it buried an entire civilization? Roughly 1,000 years before the Clone Wars, the Chiss faced annihilation. An unknown aggressor, whose identity is still lost to history, pressed deeper into Chiss space, conquering star systems one after another. Facing extinction, the Chiss High Command authorized the use of an ancient alien weapon called the Starflash. The Starflash didn't merely destroy ships, it erased entire fleets. In one blinding moment, the Chiss vaporized the invading armada, but the power unleashed was too great. It destabilized Scylla's star. Over decades, the sun cooled. Average surface temperatures plummeted. Snowstorms grew more savage. Even ice swallowed the cities above ground, entombing the once flourishing planet. Imagine winning your people's survival, only to doom your homeworld to eternal winter. That single act shaped Scylla's destiny for the next 1,000 years. Faced with extinction on the surface, the Chiss retreated underground. Over centuries, they hollowed vast networks of tunnels and caverns, some so large they held entire mountain ranges or inland seas. Artificial sunlight mimicked day and night, allowing agriculture, forests and entire cities to thrive far below the frost. One of the most impressive examples is the cavern city of Sasplar. It's both a city and a fortress, with towering buildings, starship hangars, and even vast lakes hidden under luminous crystal ceilings. But the Chiss did more than merely survive. They engineered an elaborate illusion. Official records claim Scylla's surface cities were vibrant and full of life, supporting a population of 8 billion. In reality, only around 60 to 70 million Chiss still lived on Scylla by the time of the Clone Wars. Above-ground cities existed purely as hollow facades. Lights flickered in empty skyscrapers. Monorail cars zoomed along deserted tracks purely to maintain the illusion for any rare off-world visitors. Why keep up such an elaborate charade? Because secrecy is the Ascendancy's ultimate weapon. If hidden worlds and secret histories fascinate you, hit subscribe. I'm exploring Star Wars' deep cuts, from icy Scylla to the mysteries of the unknown regions. Let's uncover the galaxy's hidden secrets together. Beneath the ice, Scylla became the heart of the galaxy's most secretive political systems, the Chiss Ascendancy. Unlike the Galactic Republic, the Ascendancy is a hybrid of aristocracy run by powerful bloodlines called the 9 ruling families, including the Myth, Irizi, Chaff, and more. These families were immense political and military influence. They formed the ruling family's council, deciding matters of war, diplomacy, and internal security. Yet politics among the Chiss is a silent, deadly game. Families constantly maneuver for prestige and resources, but open conflict is forbidden. Instead, they employ subtle tactics, strategic marriages, covert sabotage, or manipulating outsiders like Thrawn for political leverage. How many wars have the Chiss fought in secret without the galaxy ever knowing? No discussion of Scylla is complete without mentioning Thrawn, Thrawn Rudol. Born on Scylla, Thrawn's early genius for strategy drew the attention and suspicion of the ruling families. Some saw him as a weapon. Others feared he'd drag the Ascendancy into a dangerous galactic conflict. His exile, as chronicled in the Ascendancy trilogy, wasn't simply punishment. It was political maneuvering. Some factions wanted him gone. Others hoped he'd serve the Ascendancy's invisible hand in galactic affairs. Thrawn's loyalty to Scylla never wavered. Even as Grand Admiral of the Empire, his ultimate goal remained protecting the Chiss and their homeworld. Was Thrawn secretly gathering intelligence for Scylla the entire time he served Palpatine? The full truth remains as frozen as the glaciers above Scylla's surface. Part of why Scylla remains hidden is the savage wilderness of the unknown regions. Unlike the orderly hyperlanes of the Inner Rim, the unknown regions are riddled with gravitic anomalies, hyperspace storms, and unstable hyperlanes. This chaos helps keep Scylla isolated. Even the Empire struggled to chart safe routes. When Emperor Palpatine sought secret refuge in the unknown regions, his navigators barely scratched the surface. That's why even Imperial records refer to Scylla only in vague terms, a shadow among stars. But how many entire civilizations lie hidden out there, as silent and secretive as the Chiss? After the fall of the Empire, Scylla's fate remains ambiguous. Some maps, like Hondo Ohnaka's Galactic Explorer Guide, hint at Scylla's approximate location, but safe hyperspace routes remain scarce. Meanwhile, rumours swirl about the new threats rising in the unknown regions. Did the Chiss Ascendancy survive the collapse of galactic order? Is Thrawn returning to lead his people once more? Or are new dangers lurking even closer to Scylla's icy heart? If Thrawn re-emerges in Star Wars storytelling, will Scylla finally be pulled into open galactic conflict? Only time and future Star Wars series will reveal those answers. Next time you look at a star map, remember, somewhere in the frozen void drifts Scylla, a world that sacrificed its son to survive and built an empire of secrets beneath a sea of ice. If you enjoyed this deep dive into hidden Star Wars lore, like this video and subscribe for more. Do you think Thrawn is secretly working for the Chiss Ascendancy? And should Star Wars reveal more of Scylla's hidden depths?
Did you know there's a planet in Star Wars where entire cities hang suspended on colossal bridges over acidic, storm-churned oceans, and where wealth and war collided for centuries? Cato Neimoidia, the jewel of the Trade Federation, a place of opulence, intrigue, and some of the Republic's bloodiest battles. But how did this fog-shrouded world become the power centre of Neimoidian ambition, and why did it ultimately fall to the Empire's iron grip? Today, we uncover the hidden story of Cato Neimoidia, the bridge cities that rose on wealth and collapsed under war. When most people think of the Neimoidians, they picture Viceroy Newt Gunray scheming aboard the Trade Federation flagship. But long before the Clone Wars, their true seat of power was Cato Neimoidia, a purse world, colonized to showcase their civilization's wealth and refinement. Imagine enormous rock arches jutting from geyser-scarred oceans, each crowned with palatial cities anchored to the cliffs. From the forests and grasslands thriving on those stone bridges to constant fog that blanketed the horizon, Cato Neimoidia looked like something out of a myth. Why build entire metropolises so precariously balanced over a corrosive sea? For the Neimoidians, it was part defence and part demonstration of their mastery over nature itself. These bridge cities were symbols that the Trade Federation could conquer
not just the marketplace, but the elements. Cato Neimoidia became the capital of Neimoidian purse works, ruled by merchant princes whose jewelled palaces completed in displays of luxury. As the Trade Federation grew into one of the wealthiest corporate powers in the galaxy, controlling nearly all trade to the Outer Rim, Cato Neimoidia was the hub where credits, politics, and weapons deals converged. But what happens when you build your entire civilization on the delicate balance of commerce, and war comes knocking? During the final decades of the Republic, Cato Neimoidia officially tried to remain neutral in the escalating conflict between the Republic and the Confederacy of Independent Systems. But neutrality is often just a word. Behind closed doors, the Neimoidians funneled resources to the Separatists while still claiming allegiance to Coruscant. As the Clone Wars ignited, the planet became a prize that both sides needed to control. You might remember Obi-Wan Kenobi's cryptic line, "That business on Cato Neimoidia doesn't count." He was referring to one of the several operations on the planet, one so disastrous it became an inside joke between Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker. In one of these battles, Anakin had to rescue Obi-Wan from a separatist trap in the Mist-choked canyons. But few know that the planet changed hands multiple times. The Trade Federation even mortgaged Cato Neimoidia to the intergalactic banking clan to fund droid production, essentially gambling their own capital to keep their influence intact. The fighting climaxed in a dramatic assault led by Jedi Master Plo Koon. He commanded Republic gunships and clone troopers across the bridge cities in a final push to capture Nute Gunray's stronghold. Although Gunray escaped, the Republic claimed a fragile victory. And then came Order 66. As Plo Koon's starfighter flew over Cato Neimoidia's canyons, the clones he trusted turned their cannons on him. He was killed instantly. One of thousands of Jedi struck down in that single moment. How did a planet so rich in defences fall so completely? Before we answer that, if you're enjoying this deep dive into Star Wars history, make sure to subscribe and join our community of fans exploring the galaxy's untold stories. It really helps the channel grow. After Palpatine declared himself Emperor, Cato Neimoidia was reduced to a vassal state. The Republic's military occupation transformed into an imperial garrison, with the Trade Federation stripped of any remaining independence. In the early imperial years, large swaths of Cato Neimoidia were left devastated. Cities burned out, infrastructure crumbling, and whole districts reliant on emergency food and water relief. When a senator dared to mock Palpatine's new regime, the Empire retaliated by withholding humanitarian supplies. One former Republic intelligence operative, Matisse, lost an eye in combat over Cato Neimoidia. Even years later, he waited for the Emperor's veteran services to approve a prosthetic replacement. Just another sign of how quickly the Neimoidians' fortunes collapsed. Yet even under Imperial rule, the bridge cities remained a hub of shady dealings. The crime lord Dryden Voss maintained a secret storehouse on the planet, and Neimoidian arms dealers like Luke Hutzok continued to profit by selling weapons to both the Empire and the Rebellion. Why did the Empire tolerate this corruption? Because as long as Cato Neimoidia's wealth kept flowing up the chain, the Emperor had little interest in truly reforming the planet. Decades later, the story didn't end. During the Galactic Civil War, Princess Leia Organa herself visited Cato Neimoidia to negotiate arms deals for the Rebel Alliance, a reminder that the planet's strategic value never fully faded. Even in the era of the New Republic, Cato Neimoidia retained its mystique. The legendary Gauntlet race, an annual competition weaving between the planet's arches and storm-lashed canyons, became a symbol of Neimoidian resilience. During the Cold War with the First Order, Resistance agents undertook missions to Cato Neimoidia to locate Lor San Tekka, tying the planet's legacy of hidden deals and secret negotiations all the way into the final trilogy. But how does a place that was once the centre of galactic commerce become a byword for decline? That's the cautionary tale of Cato Neimoidia, a planet that tried to stay neutral, tried to profit from every side, and in the end, lost almost everything. From its golden palaces and fog-shrouded arches, to the battles that decided the fate of the Republic, Cato Neimoidia is more than just a backdrop for a few passing lines of dialogue. It's the story of ambition, hubris, and the price of playing both sides in a galactic conflict. Did you know that this planet was used as the staging ground for the entire Rebel fleet before the assault on the second Death Star? Beneath the seas of molten rock, amid rivers of lava and skies shimmering with toxic haze, lies a world of secrets, industry, and rebellion. But how did this scorching volcanic planet become the hidden forge of Imperial starships, and a key launching point for the attack on the Death Star itself? Why did Celestans, peaceful subterranean dwellers, rise up to join a galaxy-wide war? Today we're diving into the obsidian depths of Sullust and the untold story of how a world of flame became a beacon of freedom. Picture a planet where the ground itself seems alive. Lava rivers slicing black scars through plains of obsidian glass, where the wind tastes of acid and ash. Would you ever guess millions of beings would choose to call this home? Sullust, located in the Outer Rim, orbits a red star and glows like a coal in the night. Its surface is a wasteland of lava flows, turquoise sulfur lakes, and razor-sharp basalt plains. The air is so toxic that most creatures would suffocate in minutes. So why stay? Why not abandon such a hostile world entirely? The answer lies beneath the crust, because hidden underground lies a jewel-like world, a vast labyrinth of high-tech cities carved into volcanic rock, protected from the poisonous atmosphere. Celestans, the native species, built glowing cavern cities like Pinium, their capital. They ride turbolifts and shuttle tubes through glittering stone corridors. The architecture is renowned across the Outer Rim for its beauty. Even under Imperial rule, dignitaries marvelled at Celestan craftsmanship. But the underground paradise wasn't enough to keep Sullust safe from galactic history, because on Sullust, even peace forged in stone can melt under the heat of war. Imagine half your entire planet working for one mega corporation. Could that same corporation secretly fund both the Empire and the Rebellion? That corporation was Sorosub, the industrial titan of Sullust, makers of starships, blasters, electronics, and mining equipment. Sorosub became the backbone of Sullust's economy. Half the population worked for Sorosub. Factories churned out TIE components, sensors, and even secret starfighter prototypes. Its shipyards were among the busiest in the Outer Rim. But here's the twist. How did a loyal Imperial supplier become the birthplace of rebellion? After Palpatine's rise, Sorosub initially welcomed Imperial contracts. Many Solustans enjoyed the newfound economic boom, until working conditions worsened, surveillance increased, and political freedoms vanished. By 18 BBY, the Empire's grip tightened. The Cobalt Labourers' Reformation Front emerged, sending demands to the Imperial Governor for better working conditions. In retaliation, the Empire detained 80% of the group. So what pushed an oppressed workforce to take up arms, and how close did Sorrowsub come to betraying the Empire outright? Sullust's caves hid more than beauty. Those same volcanic tunnels became the perfect hiding place for a rebellion. During the Clone Wars, Sullust's strategic location on the Rima trade route made it a target. The world briefly joined the Confederacy of Independent Systems, hosting battles between Republic and Separatist forces. Later, under Imperial rule, Sullust became a vital source of fuel and minerals for Empire starships, but dissent simmered beneath the surface. So why didn't the Empire simply crush Sullust outright? Because the Empire needed Sullust's factories. Shutting down production risked losing essential ships and technology. Still, tensions boiled over. After the Battle of Hoth, the Empire suspected the Cobalt Front of sheltering rebels. They locked down Pinium after a bombing near a manufacturing plant. Meanwhile, the Rebel Alliance marked Sullust as a safe world, used for storing starships and coordinating resistance cells. But the real turning point came with one of the most daring operations of the entire galactic civil war. If you're enjoying this deep dive into the volcanic planet and rebellion, don't forget to like, subscribe and ring the bell. We're exploring every corner of the galaxy, and there's so much more on Sullust still to uncover. Did you know the rebellion once tried to ignite an uprising on Sullust, only to watch it nearly end in total disaster? After Hoth, the rebels launched Operation Ringbreaker, aiming to attack Imperial industrial worlds to distract from Kuat's defences. Sullust was one of their prime targets. The Rebel 61st Mobile Infantry arrived near Inusu Tor, a mineral processing volcano. Their plan was a swift strike. Instead, they flew straight into an Imperial ambush. For 3 days, the siege of Inusu Tor raged. Rebel troops were pinned on molten slopes, while the Imperial Star Destroyer Herald arrived to crush them. So how did a doomed rebel company turn the tide? Local Sullustan resistance fighters poured out of tunnels to aid the rebels. Finally, even the Cobalt Front rose up in Pinium, overwhelming Imperial forces in the streets. The insurrection spread like wildfire. By the battle's end, the Empire was forced to withdraw. Sullust was free, and now firmly in the rebel camp. Few know this, but Sullust wasn't just a liberated world. It was the secret springboard for the greatest battle in galactic history. After the siege, Admiral Akbar used Sullust as the staging ground for the entire rebel fleet before the assault on the second Death Star. From Sullust, ships travelled the hidden sanctuary pipeline to reach Endor unseen. Think about it. Without Sullust tunnels and secret starports, could the Battle of Endor and the fall of the Empire ever have happened at all? Sullust's underground cities became rebel headquarters. Fighters like Shrif Surgav coordinated missions there, while General Lando Calrissian later discovered hidden Imperial factories still operating on the surface. And the planet didn't fade into obscurity afterward. By 28 ABY, Sullust was represented in the New Republic Senate by Senator Anib Ney, proving it remained a vital player in galactic politics. From volcanic hellscape the hidden rebel haven, Sullust stands as one of the galaxy's most unlikely battlegrounds. But what other secrets might still lie buried beneath its rivers of lava? And how many more hidden worlds like it shape the fate of the galaxy without ever making the front pages of history?
Beneath the haunting clouds of Braca, the galaxy's forgotten war machines rot in silence. Once proud Jedi cruisers, symbols of the Republic's strength, now lie buried in endless heaps of wreckage. But this isn't just a junkyard. It's a secret battlefield, a haven for fugitives, and a hidden stage for one of the Empire's darkest hunts. How did a remote mid-rim world become the galaxy's scrapyard of fallen empires? What secrets still linger in the rusted hulls of Jedi warships? And why did the Empire and the later First Order fight so hard to control this forsaken world? Welcome to Inspired Theories, and today we uncover the brutal history of Braca, the junkyard world built on Jedi wreckage. Long before it became an Imperial scrapyard, Braca was already grim and inhospitable. Located in the mid-rim, it orbited a single moon and sat precariously near several key hyperspace lanes, including the Randon Run, a route that connected Braca to Lantilles and Oiter, both of which linked into the Perlemian trade route. This strategic location made Braca a prime logistical waypoint, and later a resource goldmine. But make no mistake, Braca was not a paradise. Its rocky surface, toxic air, and industrial decay made survival difficult. Most of its inhabitants weren't citizens. They were labourers, scrappers working for the dominant force on the planet, the Scrapper Guild. Originally composed of skilled engineers and shipwrights, the Scrapper Guild degenerated into a corporate stronghold of exploitation. By the 5th year of Imperial rule, even master engineers had become manual labourers, tearing apart wreckage for spare parts. They lived under harsh conditions, their meagre wages funneled right back into the overpriced food and shelter controlled by the Guild. The entire economy was built on scavenging what others left behind. War machines, fallen Jedi vessels, and even stolen Republic tech. But how did it get this way? Braca first rose to strategic importance during the Clone Wars, when the Separatists launched a surprise assault early in the conflict. The Republic responded quickly, dispatching forces led by a newly knighted Jedi, Cyrus O'Kent. But this was only the beginning. As the war escalated, Braca's vast junk fields made it an ideal staging ground for Republic fleet operations. It was during this time that the Jedi General Jaro Tapal and his Padawan Cal Kestis were stationed aboard the Venator-class Albedo Brave in orbit above the planet. They led the 13th Battalion in repelling separatist advances and dismantling local sympathizers within the Scrapper Guild. But the war's final chapter would bring a far greater tragedy. In 19 BBY, the clone betrayal known as Order 66 turned the Republic's army against the Jedi. On Braca, it unfolded aboard the Albedo Brave. Jaro Tapal was killed in the chaos, and young Cal Kestis crash-landed on the planet, alone, wounded, and forced into hiding. He joined the very scrappers he once commanded from orbit, concealing his force sensitivity and working among the wreckage for 5 years. This is where Braca's story becomes far more than one of war and decay, because the Empire didn't just leave the Jedi wreckage untouched. They were watching. If you're enjoying this deep dive into Braca's brutal history, Make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss our weekly Star Wars Deep Lore videos. Now back to the archives. Under Imperial rule, Bracca became an essential node in the Empire's vast logistics machine. Venator-class ships, Arc-170s, and other Republic vessels were towed here to be scrapped. Valuable technology, once used to fight for peace, was broken down and sold back to the same regime that had caused the war. The Scrapper Guild now functioned as a privatized arm of the Empire. Work crews rode open-air transport trains, slicing hulls with plasma cutters, prying apart warships, and disposing of debris into a massive sinkhole called the Iblis Maw. It wasn't just trash, it was a planetary-scale operation. And for many, it was a prison without bars. One scrapper, Prout, famously lamented, "To the Empire, we're all just expendable." This wasn't hyperbole. Workers frequently died in industrial accidents, and the Guild turned a blind eye. In fact, it was one such accident that would force Cal Kestis to reveal his powers, saving Prout from falling to his death and dooming them both. The Inquisitors arrived swiftly and executed Prout on sight, exposing Bracca as a hidden hunting ground for the Empire's Jedi Purge. Bracca's significance didn't end here. In the early Imperial era, Clone Force 99, the rogue squad known as the Bad Batch, travelled to Bracca seeking a solution to their inhibitor chips. Aboard a wrecked Jedi cruiser, they performed a risky procedure to remove the devices controlling their minds. But the Scrapper Guild reported them to the Empire, leading to a violent skirmish and the kidnapping of the young clone Omega by Cad Bane. Bracca, it seemed, was now more than a junkyard. It was a nexus of galactic resistance and surveillance. Decades later, Bracca again entered galactic history. With the New Republic shattered and the First Order on the rise, the planet was used to decommission old Republic ships. But Leia Organa had other plans. She ordered Shriv Surgat to infiltrate the Guild, recover starfighters, and prepare for the coming war. Drosh Squadron, composed of volunteers and resistance pilots, succeeded in stealing several X-Wings, though not without loss. It was one of the last major operations conducted on Bracca before the war spilled elsewhere. Even now, many believe Bracca holds more than rust and ruin. The twisted remnants of the Jedi starships and Republic war tech may still contain secrets, encrypted holocrons, lost lightsabers, or long-dead clone command logs. And perhaps, most chilling of all, Bracca is a stark reminder of how even the galaxy's noblest machines can be melted down into tools of oppression. So next time you watch a ship being scrapped in the distance, ask yourself, how much history just got erased, and who profits from keeping it buried? But what do you think? How pivotal were the resources scrapped at Bracca to the Empire's machine? What kind of world would the Empire choose to hide its greatest secret? A secret so devastating it could unravel their reign before it even began. Beneath the crashing waves and tranquil skies of Scarif, the most destructive project in galactic history was not only born, it was hidden, guarded, and ultimately exposed in one of the most daring heists the galaxy ever saw. But how did this paradise become the vault for the Death Star? Why was the planet so heavily shielded? And what finally brought it all crashing down? Today, we unlock the secrets of Scarif, the hidden world that held the key to the Empire's ultimate weapon. What made Scarif the ideal place to build and bury the secrets of the Empire? Scarif was a tropical world in the Abrion sector of the southeast Outer Rim, remote, unpopulated, and far from the corridors of galactic power. But beneath this beauty lay something far more valuable, a mantle filled with dense starship-grade metals, perfect for Imperial construction. The Imperial installations on the planet were known to be one of the very few sites where pure, refined coaxium was stored, other than Mercy Island. Initially, a quiet world with a small resort, where visitors once sipped drinks like the Scarif slush, the planet transformed once the Empire arrived. Under the watch of director Orson Krennic and the Tarkin Initiative, Scarif was reimagined as a fortress, a vast construction hub, weapons research facility, and top-secret archive, all centered around the Citadel Tower. But what were they trying to hide, and why did it require planetary-scale defenses? If you're enjoying this deep dive into Scarif and its history, make sure to like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you don't miss our weekly Star Wars Deep Lore videos. Now back to the archives. How do you lock down an entire planet from intrusion, even from within the Empire itself? Scarif's defining feature wasn't just its data vaults or coaxium fuel reserves. It was its shield, a planetary deflector barrier that encased the entire world, impenetrable except for a single entry point, the Shield Gate, a Golan M3185 space station suspended in high orbit. This was no standard installation. Scarif was guarded by multiple Star Destroyers, TIE Fighter squadrons, and a security garrison under General Satoris Ramdan. Scarif was so secret, even the most high-ranking Imperial officers had no idea what it truly held. Inside the Citadel Tower, the Empire stored the complete digital record of its military projects, including the files of Project Stardust, the Death Star. While the superweapon was physically constructed over Geonosis and later finished in orbit above Scarif, its design, data logs, and command protocols were locked deep within this tower. But for all their precautions, what fatal mistake did the Empire make that would lead to its most devastating breach? What happens when a secret so dangerous it could topple empires finally escapes? In 1 BBY, that mistake arrived in the form of Jyn Erso, daughter of the Death Star's unwilling chief engineer Galen Erso. With her father's knowledge of a flaw embedded within the Death Star design, Jyn led a desperate mission to Scarif alongside Cassian Andor, K2SO, and a ragtag strike team now known as Rogue One. Their objective was simple in theory, but suicidal in practice: infiltrate the most secure facility in the Empire and steal the Death Star plans. The operation ignited the Battle of Scarif, a turning point in the galactic civil war. While ground troops launched a diversion, Jyn and Cassian broke into the data vault, extracted the plans, and beamed them to the rebel fleet above. The Shield Gate was destroyed in the process, and the stolen plans were successfully passed to Leia Organa, just moments before Darth Vader's now infamous pursuit aboard the Tantive 4. But what did it cost? And how far was the Empire willing to go to erase Scarif from its memory? Why would they destroy its own secret base? As the tide turned against the garrison, and Director Krennic watched his project unravel, Grand Moff Tarkin made a cold and calculated move. From orbit, he ordered the Death Star, now fully operational, to fire a single reactor ignition blast on Scarif. The blast incinerated the Citadel Tower, boiled the oceans, and sent shockwaves across the planet's surface, wiping out all witnesses and rebels in the vicinity, including Krennic himself. The planetary shield was shattered, the base destroyed, and Scarif was effectively erased from operational existence. Yet the data made it out. The plans reached Yavin 4. The flaw was discovered, and soon after, the Death Star would be destroyed at the Battle of Yavin by a young pilot named Luke Skywalker. But why was the Empire so confident in Scarif's invulnerability to begin with? And what other secrets might still lie buried beneath its ocean ruins? Today, Scarif stands as a scarred symbol of Imperial arrogance, a beautiful world repurposed for control, only to be consumed by the very weapon it was built to protect. Its name lives on through the few fragments of memory that escaped its destruction. A tropical drink recipe, scattered Imperial records, and the courageous legacy of the Rogue One team who gave their lives to ignite the spark of rebellion. But somewhere beneath the oceans, beneath the ash, is the haunting truth of Scarif's final lesson. No matter how strong your shield is, the truth always finds a way through. But what do you think? Was the data leak on Scarif merely another example of Imperial incompetence?
Why did Luke Skywalker, the galaxy's last Jedi Master, retreat here after failing Ben Solo? And what secrets did this lost world hold? Secrets that even the Jedi Temple on Coruscant tried to forget. Beneath the crashing waves and ancient stone huts of Acto lies a story older than the Jedi Order itself, and a tragedy that reshaped it. This oceanic planet, hidden among the stars of the unknown regions, wasn't just a sanctuary. It was the birthplace of philosophy, a legacy, and ultimately, a warning. To understand Luke's exile, we must return to the beginning. Acto is canonically recognised as the site of the first Jedi Temple, a claim confirmed both in universe lore and direct statements from Luke Skywalker himself. But what does that truly mean? The origins of the Jedi date back over 25,000 years to the ancient order known as the Jedi, born on the deep core world of Titan. These early Force practitioners balanced both light and dark, seeking harmony with the Force rather than domination or suppression. But as Titan became a battleground between light and dark philosophies, the order fractured. Those who embraced the light fled, and one group settled on Acto. Acto became their refuge. It was here, among the cliffs and seas, that the first true Jedi Temple, not Jedi, but Jedi, was founded. Unlike later temples, filled with towering spires and technological wonder, the Acto Temple was made of stone, simple, monastic, ancient. Yet why would they choose such an isolated, ocean-wrapped world? Perhaps because the Jedi were still learning to guard themselves from the darkness. Acto was remote, balanced, untouched by Sith corruption, a place to listen to the Force, not command it. But one mystery remains. If this was the birthplace of the Jedi Order, why was it lost for millennia? Within the central meditation chamber of Acto's temple lies one of the strangest and most cryptic icons in all of Star Wars, a mosaic known as the Prime Jedi. This figure is portrayed in deep meditation, a perfect yin-yang symmetry of dark and light. It is not wielding a lightsaber, it is not fighting. Instead, it is balanced, centered. This depiction predates even the Jedi High Republic. But here's what's truly curious. The Jedi of the prequel era never reference the Prime Jedi. He's absent from their texts, their murals, their teachings. The Coruscant Temple never acknowledged him. Was he forgotten or intentionally buried? Could it be that this Prime Jedi still followed the old Jedi balance? Before the light became dogma and the dark became hearsay? And if so, did Luke Skywalker find this truth too late? The Lanai, also called the Caretakers, are a sentient species native to Acto, and direct descendants of the original inhabitants who watched over the first Jedi Temple. They are all female, matrilineal, and deeply spiritual. But what's strange is their almost religious dedication to preserving Jedi history, even though the Jedi themselves are long gone. They keep the temple pristine, they maintain its ancient scripts, they watch the tides, and yet they hold no power in the Force. So why do they serve the Jedi legacy? What oath bound them to the Order? It's implied that their traditions predate even the Jedi's arrival, that the Lanai are tied to Acto itself, to the Force, in a more ancient, elemental way. They're not Jedi, but they might represent something older, something Luke sensed but never fully understood. Did the Caretakers serve the Jedi, or do they serve the Force? Remember, Force ghosts on Acto are able to interact with the real world, so it is appropriate to speculate that Acto is a Force nexus strong in the light which allows them to do this. Amid the moss-covered islands of Acto stood one of the most sacred relics of the Jedi Order, the Uneti tree, a Force-sensitive species known to grow in key Jedi locations. One such tree was planted in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, another survived on Yavin 4, but on Acto, the Uneti tree was ancient, possibly original, and within it, Luke discovered the sacred Jedi texts. These were not holograms or digital records. These were parchment manuscripts, handwritten in languages so old they predated Basic. Some were in High Galactic, others in Titanese. They weren't dogma, they were philosophy, accounts of the Jedi's earliest teachings, long before the rise of the Sith, the Rule of Two, or even the Republic. Yoda called them page-turners, but Luke knew better. These texts represented what the Jedi were meant to be, before they became what the galaxy needed them to be. Was Luke trying to rebuild the Jedi, or tear it down and start over? After the destruction of his new Jedi Temple and the fall of Ben Solo, Luke Skywalker vanished. To the galaxy, he was a myth, a ghost. Even Leia didn't know where he had gone. But Luke had set course not just to hide, but to end the Jedi Order itself. The location he sought wasn't random. In The Last Jedi, Luke tells Rey, "I came to this island to die. It's time for the Jedi to end." But he didn't choose Acto because it was remote. He chose it because it was the origin, the beginning of the Jedi, and thus, the only place they could truly end. The map to Luke's location was incomplete. Lor San Tekka, a member of the Church of the Force, possessed part of it. The rest was hidden within the archives of the Empire and guarded by R2. But how did Luke find it? To answer that, we must go to the planet Pilio and an artifact once buried in the vaults of the Empire. In Battlefront 2, a key piece of Luke's journey is revealed. On the planet Pilio, in the aftermath of the Battle of Endor, Luke Skywalker infiltrated an Imperial vault storing Jedi artifacts seized during Palpatine's reign. Among them was a strange device, a Jedi compass. This compass was more than just navigational. It was attuned to the Force and encoded with hyperspace coordinates that led to one place, Ahch-To. But how did the Emperor know about it? The vault on Pilio was personally curated by Palpatine, who had long feared ancient Jedi secrets. His project, Blackwing, and contingency operations aimed to erase such knowledge from the galaxy. And yet, he kept this compass. That suggests Palpatine feared Ahch-To, or worse, wanted to control it. Luke took the compass, but not blindly. The Force called to him, and over the years, after the fall of Ben Solo, the compass led him to the birthplace of the Jedi, to unlearn what the Jedi had become, and perhaps to return to what they were meant to be. When Rey arrives on Ahch-To, she expects a legend. What she finds is a broken man. Luke refuses to train her, not out of cruelty, but conviction. To him, the Jedi are flawed, dangerously so. He cites their arrogance during the Clone Wars, their failure to stop Sidious, and the burden of their legacy. He sees Ben Solo's fall as the ultimate proof. But Ahch-To begins to test Rey in ways Luke doesn't expect. She senses the dark side cave beneath the island, a place heavy with power. She's drawn to it. She confronts it willingly. And when she emerges, it isn't fear she carries, but a question. I need someone to show me my place in all this. This echoes Luke's own journey on Dagobah, but with a critical difference. Rey doesn't run from the dark. She faces it, she listens, and she challenges Luke to stop fearing the past. But it would take another visitor, one Luke never expected, to break through his isolation. In one of the most poignant moments of The Last Jedi, the spirit of Master Yoda returns to Luke on a stormy night atop Ahch-To. Luke plans to burn the Uneti tree and the sacred text within, but Yoda intervenes by summoning a bolt of lightning and burning it himself. Time it is for you to look past a pile of old books. This moment isn't an erasure of Jedi knowledge, it's a liberation from dogma. Yoda tells Luke that failure is the greatest teacher, that the legacy of the Jedi isn't perfection, but persistence. What's ironic is that Rey had already taken the texts. They're later seen aboard the Falcon, but Luke didn't know that. And Yoda's acts forced him to accept a deeper truth. The Jedi must evolve, or they will die with their traditions. Yoda reminds Luke of who he truly is, a teacher, not a relic. And in doing so, he reawakens the spark of the Jedi Master, buried beneath guilt and silence. Deep beneath the waters of Ahch-To lies a cave strong in the dark side of the Force. It mirrors the dark side cave on Dagobah, another place steeped in the Force's shadow, and its purpose is similar: revelation. Rey descends into the cave in The Last Jedi, searching for her parents, but what she finds is herself, reflected, repeated, endless, and alone. She asks the Force for her origin, and the Force answers, "You are the beginning." This cave isn't evil, it's truth. It strips away illusions, expectations, legacy. It doesn't show her Palpatine. It doesn't show her Luke. It shows her herself. And that, in many ways, is the ultimate Jedi trial. Just as Luke saw his own face beneath Vader's helmet on Dagobah, Rey sees the truth that destiny begins not in blood, but in choice. The cave was not calling her to the dark. It was testing her will to define her own path. By the end of The Last Jedi, Luke has been changed. He does not leave Ahch-To physically, but through the Force, he projects his essence across the galaxy to create. There, he confronts Kylo Ren, not with a blade, but with wisdom. He buys the Resistance time. He inspires the galaxy, and he fulfills his final purpose, not as a warrior, but as a legend. His death isn't a defeat, it's a transfiguration. Luke becomes one with the Force, seated upon the ancient stone of Ahch-To, facing the twin suns, mirroring his first moment on Tatooine decades ago. The boy who looked to the horizon became the teacher who looked to the future. Ahch-To was never just an exile's prison. It was the galaxy's first hope, and nearly its last. From the Prime Jedi to Luke Skywalker, the island remained a place of reflection, revelation, and renewal. A place where the Force whispers not through war, but through balance. And while the Jedi texts now reside with Rey, the island remains, waiting for the next seeker, waiting for the next beginning. But what do you think? Why did Luke ever return to Ahch-To? Before he was the cyborg terror of the Clone Wars, before he became the Jedi-killing machine known as General Grievous, he was Kaimane Jai Sheilab, a flesh-and-blood warlord forged in fire. But what if I told you the Republic didn't just create their greatest enemy, they betrayed his entire species? What happened on the distant planet of Kalee wasn't just a war, it was a genocide ignored by the Jedi, a legacy buried by the Republic, and a forgotten crucible that turned a warrior into a monster. This is the story of the lost war of the Kaleesh. Why would a backwater planet in wild space shake the foundations of the Jedi Order itself? Kalee was a remote, tropical world on the edges of wild space, nestled in the Hoth sector, covered in dense jungle, jagged cliffs, and coral sand beaches. The planet was as beautiful as it was brutal. Life here was survival, and for the native Kaleesh, it made warriors out of everyone. The Kaleesh were reptilian humanoids, hunter warriors who wore bone masks carved from Karabakh skulls. They revered their ancestors, told stories through blood and battle, and were known for hunting beasts like the Mumu to craft ceremonial garb. They lived in towering temple cities like Shrupak, structures reminiscent of Mesoamerican ziggurats. But despite their honour and martial prowess, the galaxy saw them as savages. Who would dare invade a planet filled with born warriors? And why would the Republic support them? Enter the Yamru, insectoid aliens from the neighbouring world of Hoth. Advanced, resource-hungry, and merciless, they began a campaign of expansionism that ravaged the Hoth sector. They didn't just colonize, they enslaved. The Yamri turned their gaze toward Kalee, For the Kalee, it was a holy war. They resisted fiercely, and leading them was Neimoidia, a prodigy of the battlefield who would later be remembered by another name, Grievous. Under Shilal's command, the Kalee pushed the Yamri off their world. But he didn't stop there. He launched counterattacks on the Yamri homeworld of Hoth, striking deep into their territory. What would make the Jedi Order support slavers against an oppressed people? As the war turned against them, the Yamri appealed to the Galactic Republic, and the Republic listened. Blinded by politics, Coruscant painted the Kalee as aggressors. The Jedi, seeing a threat to galactic peace, sided with the Yamri. The Kalee were hit with sanctions, trade embargoes, and planetary fines. Crops failed. Medicine stopped arriving. Hundreds of thousands starved. The Republic's decision wasn't just cruel, it was catastrophic. It taught Neimoidia one lesson he never forgot. The Jedi would protect their own interests, not justice. Was General Grievous born or built? In truth, both. Desperate to sustain Kalee through war and famine, Grievous accepted missions from the intergalactic banking clan, but he was betrayed. His shuttle exploded mid-flight. An accident engineered by San Hill of the banking clan and Wat Tambor of the Techno Union. The shattered body of Neimoidia was reconstructed by Geonosian engineers, his brain reprogrammed to serve separatist interests, his hatred of the Jedi undiminished. Thus, the monster was born, Grievous. In exchange for his loyalty, the banking clan funded the economic recovery of Kalee, but it came at the price of his soul. What became of the Kalee after Grievous left their world? With their warlord gone, the Kalee were led by Bentiles San Scar, a commander as ruthless as his predecessor. They massacred Yamri colonies on Oben and resettled there, finally finding fertile land and resources. Oben became a new homeworld for the Kalee, until the Galactic Empire arose. When they resisted Imperial rule, Captain Thrawn bombarded the planet from orbit. Scar surrendered and joined the Empire. Another chapter of Kalee suffering began, this time in silence. Does the story of Kalee end with Grievous, or continue long after? Even after Grievous's death, Kalee's legacy echoed in whispers. During a culinary tour in 35 ABY, galactic chef Strono Tugs visited Kalee and described a world rich in ancient culture and warrior tradition. His ultimate cookbook even included recipes like Karabakh skewers, meals once served to warlords. This small mention reminds us that Kalee still exists, tucked in the shadows of galactic maps, a warrior people broken by galactic powers, yet unforgotten. How did the Republic's betrayal of one planet help create the Clone Wars' deadliest general? The answer is Kalee. It's not just the birthplace of General Grievous. It's the crucible that forged his hatred. It's the world the Jedi abandoned, the culture the Republic tried to erase, and the battlefield where a noble warrior became a nightmare. In forgetting Kalee, the Republic sealed its fate. It turned a war hero into a war machine. It created the monster that would one day bring the Jedi to their knees. But what do you think? Would Grievous have ultimately turned against the Jedi, regardless of separatist inclusion? Beneath the vines of a forgotten jungle lies a world that has shaped Jedi, toppled empires, and forged rebels in fire. This isn't just another world lost in the chaos of the Clone Wars. This is Onderon, a place where survival gave birth to resistance, where monarchy ruled behind towering walls, and where one family's sacrifice sparked a rebellion that would echo through the stars. But how did a remote, jungle-covered Inner Rim planet rise to become a crucible for heroes like Steela and Saw Gerrera, and a staging ground for ancient Sith sorcery? And what secrets still lie buried beneath the haunted soil of Isis? Before the Jedi, before the rebellion, Onderon was already a planet shaped by struggle. Located in the Inner Rim, it stood apart from its neighbours, with an ecosystem as hostile as any Outer Rim death world. From the moment the first human settlers arrived, they found themselves in a fight for survival, not against rival civilizations, but against the planet itself. To survive, early Onderonians didn't conquer nature, they fortified themselves against it. They built enormous walled cities, the most famous of which, Isis, encircled by towering defences. Outside these walls, the planet's lethal wilderness remained almost untouched, roamed only by outcasts who rejected city life. These survivors developed a powerful bond with native rupings, flying beasts that would later serve as critical mounts in both ancient battles and the modern Clone Wars rebellion. But even as civilization took root behind the stone walls of Isis, something darker was awakening beneath the soil, something far older than the Republic. What if I told you Onderon wasn't just a place of resistance, but a world steeped in dark ritual and Sith magic, hidden deep in the pages of the Keldroma epics, a legendary, semi-mythical text chronicling the events of the Great Sith War, is the tale of a Sith translation talisman unearthed on Onderon. This artifact, capable of deciphering ancient Force-imbued scrolls, was so powerful it became a keystone in the rise of the Crate, a Sith cult that nearly toppled the Republic 4,000 years before the Clone Wars. Was it coincidence that this haunted world bred the likes of Saw Gerrera, a rebel so radical even Mon Mothma would later turn her back on him? Or was the spirit of defiance older than any lightsaber jewel, buried deep in the planet's very roots? By the middle of the Clone Wars, Onderon stood on the brink. Although technically aligned with the Republic, its royal leadership grew increasingly sympathetic to the Confederacy of Independent Systems. This culminated in a full-blown separatist-backed coup, led by the puppet king Sanjay Rash, who ousted the loyal monarch King Denop and seized the throne of Isis. But the Republic faced a dilemma. Onderon's strategic location, bordering Hoth space, close to the core, and dangerously close to the separatist corridors, made it too important to lose. Yet Chancellor Palpatine and the Senate couldn't risk direct intervention. Open military involvement would allow Count Dooku to paint the Republic as an occupying force, and drive more systems into the separatist camp. So the Jedi found a new strategy, one that would quietly test the future of the rebellion itself. Enter the Onderon Rebels, a ragtag resistance group hiding in the ruins beyond Isis. At their heart stood three figures who would shape the galaxy's future: Stila Guerrera, the inspirational leader who unified fractious factions with her courage and clarity. Saw Gerrera, her older brother, a fiery warrior whose tactics grew darker with every battle. Lux Bonteri, the son of separatist senator Mina Bonteri, and a political orphan caught between ideals and survival. With Jedi Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Ahsoka Tano, and clone Captain Rex acting as advisors, the rebels began a campaign of urban guerrilla warfare. They struck at droid convoys, bombed key facilities, and sowed chaos among separatist-aligned government, all while building support among the people. But behind the scenes, two different philosophies clashed. Anakin favoured direct, aggressive tactics, teaching the rebels to fight like soldiers. Ahsoka, who remained behind as their main contact, urged balance and restraint. As the lines blurred between Jedi ideals and real-world insurgency, Stila emerged as a symbol of hope, while Saw grew restless under anyone's command. Could this early experiment in rebel warfare have planted the seeds for the Alliance to restore the Republic? Or did it instead birth something darker, the kind of radical extremism that would later drive Saw into the shadows, haunted by friends and foes alike? And then came the moment that would break them all. Victory always has a price. After weeks of resistance, the Onderon rebels managed to rally the people of Isis. With the help of captured defoliator tanks, they stormed the city, toppled King Rash's regime, and restored King Dendop to the throne. But during the final battle, Stila Guerrera was mortally wounded in a tragic crossfire, shot during a rescue attempt by a malfunctioning droid gunship, and falling from a cliff as Saw and Ahsoka watched helpless. Stila's death became a turning point. It didn't just end the campaign, it ended the soul of the movement. Her leadership had kept the rebels united, and without her, the group fractured. Saw Gerrera, consumed by guilt and rage, began walking a path that would sever him from the Jedi, the Republic, and even his own people. King Dendop was restored, but he ruled a broken people. Onderon was free, but fragile. The Jedi returned to Coruscant, unsure if they had planted hope, or merely the first seeds of chaos. And from this crucible, a future guerrilla leader was born, one who would fight on Geonosis, who would face the Empire, and who would clash even with Mon Mothma herself. But what happened to Onderon in the Imperial era? How did Saw's return reshape the planet's fate? And what was the Empire hiding there, deep beneath the ruins of Isis? Onderon's fragile independence didn't last long. After the fall of the Republic and the rise of the Galactic Empire, Palpatine turned his attention to securing the Mid-Rim and Inner Rim worlds, especially those with recent histories of resistance. Onderon, with its jungle-covered terrain and rebellious population, became a prime target for Imperial control. The Empire installed governors, established garrisons in Isis, and built secret facilities outside the city walls. But while many worlds submitted quietly, Onderon did not. From the ashes of his sister's revolution, Saw Gerrera returned, but this time he wasn't a Jedi-backed rebel. He was a fugitive, a warrior without a leash, hunted by both Imperials and the remnants of his former allies. He called his new group the Partisans, and their mission was simple: total war against the Empire. Operating from hidden bases deep in the Dixon jungles, Saw waged an unrelenting campaign of sabotage, ambushes, and bombings. His partisans destroyed supply convoys, assassinated governors, and uncovered Imperial secrets, including classified cloning research and kyber crystal mining projects. Yet Saw's methods grew darker over time. Civilians were caught in the crossfire. Loyalist Onderonians who refused to support him were branded collaborators, and unlike the emerging Rebel Alliance, Saw embraced torture, preemptive strikes, and even attacks on Imperial-aligned civilian targets. He was no longer fighting for Onderon's freedom. He was fighting for vengeance. One of the darkest examples came when Clone Force 99, the Bad Batch, visited Onderon on an early mission from Admiral Tarkin. Expecting to eliminate separatist holdouts, they instead found Guerrera's new recruits. Civilians, armed barely with blasters, preparing for war. Saw himself appeared and issued a dire warning. You can either adapt and survive, or die with the past. What did the Empire fear so much on Onderon that they launched Black Ops missions and deployed elite clones to hunt Saw down? And what ancient truths might have been buried beneath the jungle, drawing the Empire's interest beyond mere insurgency? The Empire's presence on Onderon wasn't just about suppressing rebellion. Intelligence reports later, recovered by both Rebel Alliance and Jyn Erso's team, revealed that the Empire had chosen Onderon as a location for top-secret experimental facilities, including bioweapon testing labs hidden deep in jungle ruins, early cloning prototype research, part of Project Warmantle, the transition from clones to conscripted stormtroopers, kyber crystal smuggling operations believed to connect with the construction of the Death Star superlaser. Onderon, long considered a backwater jungle world, now found itself on the front lines of Imperial science and secrecy. This convergence of secrets is what made Saw such a threat. He didn't just fight stormtroopers, he knew things. He exposed operations that the Empire had buried under classified orders, and that made him one of Palpatine's most hunted enemies. But Saw also burned every bridge. Even when the Rebel Alliance was forming under Bail Organa, Mon Mothma, and General Draven, they refused to work with him. Saw was labelled a terrorist, a liability, a loose cannon who endangered the broader cause. By the time of Rogue One, Saw had become a legend and a ghost, still operating from ruins on planets like Jedha, but his heart always remained on Onderon. Yet while he died on Jedha, his war never ended. His partisan cells continued to fight in his name across the galaxy, and his ruthless legacy remained etched in Onderon's soil. But what happened to Onderon after the fall of the Empire? Did it finally know peace? Or did war simply change faces? When the second Death Star was destroyed above Endor and Emperor Palpatine fell, the news reached Onderon not with celebration, but with skepticism. After all, the Jungle Moon had long learned that peace was a fleeting illusion. The New Republic was struggling to establish order across the galaxy, was slow to respond to the chaos that followed the fall of the Empire. Imperial governors on Onderon fought to retain power, turning their forces into warlords. Local militias filled the vacuum, including splinter groups of Saw Gerrera's partisans, now fractured, leaderless, and hardened by years of guerrilla warfare. The Battle of Onderon wasn't a single battle. It was a drawn-out purge of Imperial remnants, former collaborators, and war profiteers. In many ways, it was a civil war. The New Republic finally stepped in, establishing a presence on Onderon by by deploying security forces and reopening diplomatic ties with ISIS. However, the damage had already been done. The jungle world remained deeply fractured, its people divided by decades of occupation, civil conflict, and partisan extremism, and the name Guerrera became both a curse and a banner. In the modern galactic era, whether during the rise of the First Order, the formation of the Resistance, or the re-emergence of the Imperial remnants, Onderon stands quietly among the mid-rim stars. Its jungles have regrown. Its city of ISIS now hosts trade delegations, resistance veterans, and cultural archives documenting the rise and fall of dozens of galactic factions. But their wounds run deep. Even today, old battlefields are overrun by plant life, hiding the bones of clone troopers, separatist droids, and partisan fighters. Children carry names like Stila and Lux, not out of nostalgia, but as defiance. And new rebel cells, inspired by Saw Gerrera's brutal methods, continue to operate in fringe systems, many of them born from his Onderonian disciples. Onderon was once just a jungle planet caught between beasts and kings, then a battleground for empires, and finally a forgotten corner of rebellion. But it never stopped resisting, and perhaps in the galaxy's endless churn of empires rising and falling, Onderon stands as a symbol, not of victory, but of endurance, of a people who bent under oppression, but never truly broke. A world where the jungle always reclaims what war tried to burn away. In the end, Onderon doesn't belong to the Jedi, the Empire, or the Rebellion. It belongs to itself. But what do you think? Should Saw Gerrera be shown more respect as a rebel leader? Before the Death Star, before Hoth, and long before Starkiller Base, there was a temple, not built by the Jedi, not even by the Rebellion, but by something darker, something ancient. Why did the rebels, in their most desperate hour, choose to build their last hope for freedom atop a ruin created by the Sith? And what secrets still pulse through the jungles of Yavin 4, long after the war was over? It was never just a moon. At first glance, Yavin 4 looks like an isolated, jungle-covered haven, ideal for hiding a rebel base. No major cities, no large populations, and no mineral value to attract corporate or military interest. Just thick canopies, mist-shrouded valleys, and alien wildlife. But it wasn't the Rebel Alliance who first chose this place. Thousands of years earlier, the moon was home to a species called the Misasi, a red-skinned, tribal warrior race enslaved and twisted by Sith alchemy. Their master, Naga Sadow, a Sith Lord from the old Sith Empire, who fled to Yavin 4 after the Great Hyperspace War around 5000 BBY. Under Sadow's rule, the Misasi became brutal temple builders, carving ziggurats into the dense jungle, structures not just for ritual, but for Sith energy manipulation. One of these became known later as the Great Temple, the very building the Rebellion would one day call home. So why did the Rebellion choose this cursed moon, once home to Sith tyrants? Would you build your new home in the house of your enemy? By 0 BBY, the Rebel Alliance needed a base completely off the Imperial radar. According to Rogue One, the Ultimate Visual Guide, General Dodonna and Mon Mothma scouted the moon due to its remoteness and natural defences. But what they found there was unexpected. The Great Temple of the Massassi, a structure 300 meters high, layered in stone and mystery, stood untouched by millennia. But it wasn't just shelter. It was radiation shielded, had access to energy conducting crystal caverns, and deep within its foundation sat rooms that still echoed with the dark side. Was it coincidence the rebels chose it, or something more? Leia Organa, according to From a Certain Point of View, The Empire Strikes Back, often commented on the eerie sensation many rebels had when walking through the temple's ancient corridors, and yet they stayed because they had no other choice. The Death Star was coming, and the only way to survive was to launch from the tomb of the Sith. Rebellion was born among shadows. From the Massassi Temple, the rebellion launched Operation Fracture, a mission to retrieve critical intelligence on the Death Star. This would lead to Rogue One, the theft of the plans from Scarif, and ultimately the Battle of Yavin. The Massassi ruins became witness to a moment that would change galactic history forever. The destruction of the first Death Star by a young pilot named Luke Skywalker, unknowingly connected to both Jedi and Sith legacies. But in the wake of that battle, the rebels faced an even darker reality. The Empire now knew their location. The ruins were silent again, but not for long. Following the Battle of Yavin, General Dodana ordered an immediate evacuation of the moon. The Empire responded with brutal precision, deploying AT-ATs, stormtroopers, and even Sith archaeologists interested in what lay beneath the temple stonework. Among them was Chelie Lona Afra, who returned with her father, droids 000 and BT-1, and the Wookiee bounty hunter Kersantin to explore the Sith ruins hidden below. There, they discovered ancient Sith bas-reliefs and remnants of the Ordu Aspectu, a forgotten Force sect. The Ordu Aspectu was a splinter group of the Jedi Order that existed long before the Galactic Civil War, until they met their doom at the hands of a rogue artificial intelligence based on one of their founders. These ruins, it seemed, had never truly been dormant. What else did the Empire find beneath the surface? And were some of those secrets better left buried? The Force never leaves a place untouched. Years after the war, Shara Bey and Kez Dameron, both veterans of the rebellion, chose to raise their son on Yavin 4. They planted a Force-sensitive tree, grown from a sapling Luke Skywalker recovered from the Jedi Temple. Their son, Poe Dameron, grew up climbing the jungle trees and flying old rebel starfighters, until one crash and a brush with the law set him on a path toward becoming one of the greatest resistance pilots ever. Even long after the battles were over, the moon still shaped the future of the galaxy. You cannot sit in a throne of shadows without casting one of your own. Several legends suggest the Great Temple was more than just a communications hub. It may have been a Sith signal relay designed to contact other Dark Lords across the galaxy. Others believe it sits atop a dark side nexus, similar to Dagobah's cave or the Well of the Dark Side on Exegol. Could the residual energy from these ancient forces have influenced the rebellion? Or was the moon itself pushing back against the Empire in its own way? The Empire tried to bend the temple to its will. The rebels simply used it for survival. But neither side ever truly understood what lay beneath. Ruins remember what others forget. Yavin 4 would fall into obscurity once again, but its story remains one of the most fascinating intersections of light and dark, history and destiny, rebellion and ruin. A Sith world became the birthplace of a new hope. A rebel boy born on that moon would one day help take down a new empire, and the temples of the Massassi still stand, as if watching, waiting. So what other forgotten worlds shape the fate of the galaxy? What other secrets lie buried beneath jungle, stone, and time? But what do you think? Do you think the rebels could really feel the dark side hold in Yavin 4? Where did the Jedi truly begin? Was there a moment, a place, a spark, where the light first ignited against the darkness? Long before the Jedi Temple rose over Coruscant's skyline, before lightsabers hummed in defense of peace and justice, before even the galaxy knew the name Jedi, there was Titan, located deep in the treacherous deep core, at coordinates L10. The planet of Titan was shrouded in legend and cloaked in dangerous hyperlanes that shifted unpredictably over millennia. Verdant and uninhabited, Titan was a world of extremes. Snow-capped polar regions like the meridional ice cap, deep forests teeming with birds, butterflies and beasts, and force-rich mountains that seemed to pulse with the energy of the galaxy itself. But Titan was not just a remote world. It was sacred, so steeped in the Force that its very surface responded to the emotional balance of its inhabitants. Light or dark, Titan reflected both. Who were the first to listen to the Force on Titan? And why did they fear both light and dark in equal measure? In the Legends timeline, as first introduced in the Power of the Jedi sourcebook, Titan was the cradle of the Jedi Order, the ancient forerunner to the Jedi. Around 36,453 BBY, a group of philosophers and monks from across the galaxy were drawn to Titan by a mysterious call in the Force. Here, they did not see the Force as something to be divided into good and evil, but something to be balanced. Ashla, the light, Bogan, the dark. These were the names they gave to Titan's twin moons, and the spiritual forces they represented. The Jedi built temples across the surface of Titan, 10 in all, each devoted to different aspects of the Force. Among them were the Temple of Knowledge, the Temple of Healing, and the Temple of Balance. The central temple, known as Kalee, stood atop a Force nexus and served as the heart of the Jedi culture. But with such immense energy came instability. Those who fell too far toward Bogan were exiled to the moon of Bogan itself to meditate and restore their balance. Eventually, a great schism fractured the Jedi Order. The followers of Bogan, later known as the Legions of Leto, would go on to form the first dark side cults, setting in motion a cycle of conflict that would shape the galaxy forever. If Titan was once the beating heart of the Force, how did it vanish from galactic memory? Despite its pivotal role in shaping galactic history, Titan gradually faded into obscurity. The chaotic nature of the deep core hyperlanes made travel perilous, and eventually Titan became inaccessible. As new worlds rose, Coruscant, Ossus, Ilum, the ancient planet of balance was abandoned. In time, it was reduced to myth. Jedi records became fragmented. Even within the sacred Jedi texts, Titan was spoken of in riddles and poetry rather than hard history. Some scholars even confused it with Acto, the planet Luke Skywalker would later identify as the site of the first Jedi Temple. But echoes of Titan lingered. Jedi pendants bore its name. Jedda's city, Titoni Square, kept the legacy alive in stone. And in the High Republic era, when Jedi Master Elzar Mann sought clarity in a Force vision, it was to Titan's moon Ashla that he travelled to for guidance. Even centuries later, Jedi across the stars still felt the gravitational pull of this long-lost world. Was the Empire afraid of what lay buried on Titan, and did Darth Vader find what he was searching for? Titan emerged again during the Galactic Civil War. In 3 ABY, the rogue archaeologist Dr. Chelie Afra lured Darth Vader to the Martyrium of Frozen Tears, a Force-rich underground shrine carved into the meridional ice cap and rumoured to date back to the earliest Jedi cults. Inside, Vader was ambushed by a trap laid by Afra, one powered by Kyberite crystal and ancient Force technology. By then, Titan had become a ghost in the Empire's archives, known only through whispers, lost coordinates, and scavenged lists of ruined Jedi sites. One such list made it into the hands of Luke Skywalker, giving him a clue that the Jedi's legacy stretched far beyond what Yoda and Obi-Wan had ever told him. What did the Force reveal to Grogu on Titan, and who answered the call? In 9 ABY, the mysterious Force-sensitive child known as Grogu was brought to Titan by Din Djarin, the Mandalorian, on the advice of Ahsoka Tano. Atop a mountain sat the ruined remains of an ancient Jedi temple. Its focal point, a seeing stone, an artifact designed to channel the Force and send out a beacon across the galaxy. When Grogu entered his meditative trance upon the stone, the Force surged outward in a blue ring of energy. Somewhere, someone answered the call. But danger followed quickly. Moff Gideon's forces descended, destroying the Razor Crest and abducting Grogu. The mountain's ancient power had not gone unnoticed. The Jedi were no longer forgotten, and neither was Titan. Why did Luke return to Titan, and what vision awaited him there? In 21 ABY, long after he had trained Leia and began the work of rebuilding the Jedi Order, Luke Skywalker returned to Titan. Standing once again at the Seeing Stone, he meditated and received a vision of himself battling dark wraiths on a Sith world of Exegol. At the brink of defeat, he was saved by the Force ghost of his father, Anakin Skywalker. Even decades after its rediscovery, Titan remained a nexus of memory, destiny, and power, a place where the Force speaks more clearly than anywhere else in the galaxy. Was Titan truly the birthplace of the Jedi, or simply one chapter in a much longer story? Though canon sources now suggest the first Jedi Temple was on Acto, Titan's influence runs deeper. It is not merely a physical place, it is a spiritual fulcrum, a symbol of the Jedi's deepest truths, that light and dark are ever intertwined, and that balance is the key to mastery. From the Jedi who first called it home, to Grogu's silent meditation, to Luke Skywalker's vision of darkness and redemption, Titan stands as the beating heart of the Force's legacy. But what do you think? Were the original Jedi wrong to banish those who felt the darkness to the moon of Bogan? To grasp the rise and fall of the Empire, one must not look to the stars, but to the world beneath their feet. Beneath the dazzling lights of the Coruscant skyline lies a truth often obscured by the glimmer of durasteel towers and the polished faces of senatorial halls. It is a world that was never slept, a city-planet whose very foundations shaped the fates of trillions. But how vital was Coruscant, really, to the rise and fall of the Galactic Empire? Was it just the seat of power, or the beating heart of a grand machine built on control, deception, and desperation? To understand, we must descend, not just into its deepest levels, but through its darkest chapters. Let us begin. Before it became the epicenter of galactic control, Coruscant had already laid the groundwork for absolute influence. Also known as the Imperial Center and later Republic City, Coruscant was an ecumenopolis, a planet entirely covered in urban development. Located in the core worlds at galactic coordinates 000, Coruscant was literally the reference point for all navigational maps. From ancient times, it was considered the political and cultural heartbeat of the galaxy. It wasn't just the capital of the Galactic Republic, it was the capital of galactic civilization itself. Even before the Empire, Coruscant was already more than a world. It was a symbol. Control Coruscant, and you controlled perception. You controlled legitimacy. But how did this symbolism transform into something far more dangerous? The Clone Wars did not begin on Coruscant, but they were won and lost there. As the Separatist crisis intensified, it was in the chambers of the Galactic Senate that Supreme Chancellor Palpatine was granted emergency powers. The catalyst? The Battle of Geonosis. The justification? Fear, chaos, and a promise of safety. It was on Coruscant that the Grand Army of the Republic was commissioned. The military-industrial machine that fueled the war was orchestrated from the highest echelons of the planet's government districts, and the war's narrative was shaped by HoloNet broadcasts pumped out from its orbital arrays. More subtly, Coruscant became a place of transformation. Behind the doors of Palpatine's office, Jedi Master Anakin Skywalker was manipulated. In the shadows of its lower levels, Count Dooku's agents infiltrated civilian networks. The Clone Wars weren't just fought in the Outer Rim. They were administered, debated, and stage managed from Coruscant. But with each passing vote and every wartime decree, Coruscant moved closer to shedding its mask of democracy. No event in Coruscant's history exemplifies its symbolic power more than the fall of the Jedi Temple. Order 66 was executed across the stars, but it was an assault on the Jedi Temple, right in the center of Galactic City, that finalized the betrayal. The temple had stood for thousands of years. It wasn't just a building, it was the spiritual and political bastion of Jedi influence, and it fell in a single night. As Anakin Skywalker, now Darth Vader, led the 501st Legion up the temple steps, the fate of the galaxy was sealed. The Jedi were no longer peacekeepers, they were branded traitors, and Coruscant, the heart of the Republic, became the dagger that cut them down. What happened next was as swift as it was chilling. In the Galactic Senate chamber, as Palpatine stood before the delegations of thousands of star systems, he declared the Republic's transformation into the First Galactic Empire. With thunderous applause, the fall of democracy was met not with resistance, but celebration. This moment didn't happen on a battlefield or within the wreckage of a separatist holdout. It happened in a domed hall of glass and durasteel, on Coruscant, where power had been centralized, concentrated, and finally consumed. Palpatine didn't need to seize the galaxy. he made the galaxy ask him to take it. And it happened right there, on the marble floors of Coruscant's political heart. Once the capital of Hope, Coruscant was renamed Imperial Center, a subtle but telling rebranding. Gone were the blue banners of the Republic. In their place, the cold insignia of the Empire spread like frost. The Jedi Temple? Gutted and rebuilt into the Imperial Palace. The Senate? Reduced to a puppet show, muzzled and neutered under Palpatine's will. The HoloNet? Now tightly monitored and curated, ensuring the narrative always favoured Imperial interests. Coruscant had become a surveillance state. ISB agents walked the streets. Holocams blinked on every corner. Fear replaced debate. Conformity replaced diversity. Yet the appearance of order made resistance difficult. To the average citizen, Coruscant still looked prosperous, still gleamed in the night. But beneath the glimmering skyline, whispers grew. If the surface of Coruscant belonged to the Empire, who claimed the shadows far below? To truly understand Coruscant's complexity, you have to descend. Beneath the planet's sky-high spires lies a world entirely different. A world of crime syndicates, forgotten populations, and crumbling infrastructure. Nowhere embodied this more than level 1313, a notorious district located deep within the underworld, far removed from sunlight, justice, or hope. Once considered the setting for a cancelled video game, level 1313 has since become canon-adjacent lore that reflects the brutal truths about Coruscant's class division. During the Empire's reign, the lower levels became a breeding ground for unrest. The deeper you went, the more Imperial control thinned. This was where the seeds of rebellion began to fester. Black market networks flourished. Information brokers passed secrets through sewer grates. Some even claimed rogue Jedi survived down here, cloaked in rags, hiding from the Emperor's wrath. The surface of Coruscant may have belonged to Palpatine, but the depths belong to the Forgotten, and the Forgotten do not stay silent forever. The Empire believed Coruscant was its greatest fortress. But what if that was its greatest vulnerability? While the core of the rebellion operated from the Outer Rim worlds like Yavin 4 and Dantooine, the early resistance to the Empire didn't begin on distant planets. It began within Coruscant's own veins. Senators like Mon Mothma, Bail Organa, and even Padme Amidala prior to her death planted the seeds of dissent right in the heart of the Imperial machine. Meetings held behind closed doors in Coruscant's diplomatic halls became the birthplace of what would become the Alliance to restore the Republic. Even as Palpatine expanded his influence, cracks began to form. Imperial overreach created tension. The imprisonment and torture of innocent civilians in the sublevels led to uprisings. Coruscant's soul was becoming restless. Bail Organa once said, "We'll need every system, every world, every voice, especially the ones closest to Palpatine, to turn the tide." And Coruscant was listening. With the recent season of Andor, we also see how Luton Rail started the rebellion from Coruscant and delivered some of the most vital pieces of information right from the heart of the Empire. Though the Emperor held court on countless worlds, it was Coruscant that became his lair, both physically and metaphysically. He no longer resided in the Senate, nor even in public view. Palpatine withdrew to the Imperial Palace, a grotesque looming structure erected over the ruins of the Jedi Temple. The symbolism was exacting. The old guardians of peace were now buried beneath his iron will. The palace itself, according to canon and legend sources, were infused with dark side architecture, intimidating, angular, and completely void of organic warmth. The public seldom saw the Emperor. His image was broadcast, but his presence became mythic, almost divine. He ruled through fear, ambiguity, and absence. Coruscant, once the most connected city in the galaxy, became a prison of isolation, where even high-ranking Moffs and governors rarely earned audience with the Emperor. It was no longer the capital of democracy. It was the throne of a god emperor. But gods, even in towers of Jurasteel, are not untouchable. In the years leading up to the Battle of Yavin, the Senate technically still existed, but it had become a ceremonial farce, stripped of power, riddled with fear, and reduced to parroting imperial decrees. Then came the moment that shattered illusion. In A New Hope, after learning of the Death Star's operational readiness, Palpatine dissolved the Senate entirely, an act heard across the galaxy with stunned horror. No more representation, no more pretense. The Empire was absolute. Mon Mothma had made her historic speech, broadcast across subspace relays, declaring open rebellion against the Empire. Though she had already fled Coruscant, her movements had root there, with operatives who had quietly gathered intelligence, forged alliances, and seeded hope. With the Senate gone, the illusion of order collapsed, and Coruscant's people, many of them, began to remember what freedom once looked like. The throne world did not fall in fire. It cracked slowly until it could no longer bear the weight of tyranny. When Darth Vader killed the Emperor at Endor, the Death Star exploded, but Coruscant remained. At first, the Empire still held, but the myth was broken. As the New Republic grew in strength and reclaimed world after world, unrest on Coruscant boiled over. In Star Wars Aftermath, it's confirmed that massive uprisings broke out in the capital. Statues of the Emperor were torn down. Stormtroopers were assaulted in the streets. The Imperial Security Bureau lost control, and resistance cells surged from the underworld to the skyline. Eventually, the New Republic captured Coruscant, but they chose not to use it as their capital, wary of repeating the Empire's centralized control. Instead, Chandrila and later Hosnian Prime became new seats of power. Coruscant, once the jewel of galactic control, was now a fractured symbol, a cautionary tale, a place that had seen everything: birth, death, betrayal, and hope. So how important was Coruscant to the rise and fall of the Empire? It was everything. The Empire didn't just rule from Coruscant. It was born in it, hardened by it, and ultimately undone by it. It was the battlefield of ideas, the forge of fear, the prison of power, and the shadowed cradle of rebellion. The story of Coruscant is the story of the galaxy itself. When it gleamed, the Republic thrived. When it darkened, the Empire rose. And when the people remembered what freedom truly meant, the skyline burned with rebellion. But what do you think? Should the rebellion have reclaimed Coruscant as the heart of the New Republic? Before the rise of the Empire, before the Jedi knew Kamino even existed, the Kaminoans were already perfecting a science that would one day change the fate of the galaxy forever. But how did this remote, storm-racked world on the very edge of wild space give birth to one of the most obedient, efficient, and lethal army the Republic had ever known? And what secret was buried beneath the waves, so dangerous, so damning, that the Empire obliterated every trace of Kaminoan civilization? To find that answer, we must dive deep into Kamino's ancient past, its scientific rise, its deadly secrets, and ultimately, its deliberate erasure from history. Kamino wasn't always an ocean world. Long before its oceans swallowed the surface, Kamino was a land-based planet of glacial plains and vast continental plateaus. The Kaminoans, once terrestrial beings, thrived in cities of stone and steel. Their long-limbed forms, now suited for sterile hallways and shallow seas, were originally evolved for navigating solid terrain. Then came the flood. Around 19,000 BBY, a catastrophic climate shift triggered the melting of Kamino's polar ice caps. Seas rose, continents vanished beneath the waves. The Kaminoans stood on the brink of extinction, but instead of seeking help from the Republic, they turned inward. Isolation became policy, pride became identity, and in their desperation, the Kaminoans embraced a new path: genetic science. To survive the water, they reshaped themselves, biologically and culturally. They built their cities on towering stilts, suspended above the stormy seas, and began the work that would come to define them: cloning. What began as a survival tool evolved into something far greater. To the Kaminoans, cloning was never merely science, it was philosophy, a way to perfect their species, to refine society, to eliminate weakness. They cloned themselves for labour, for research, even for governance. Entire castes were designed for specific roles, engineered to perform with absolute efficiency. By 4,500 BBY, whispers of Kamino's expertise had reached even the distant ears of the Republic. Though largely unknown and unvisited, Kamino had become a name associated with genetic miracles and moral ambiguity. Their Kyber dart weaponry, later used to kill Zam Wesell, symbolised their clinical precision and secrecy. But all of that changed with a single commission. Sometime before 32 BBY, Jedi Master Sifo Dyas came to Kamino with a bold request: create an army for the Republic. Though the Jedi Council rejected his vision, the Kaminoans accepted. To them, it was destiny. Using the genetic material of Jango Fett, a Mandalorian bounty hunter, they undertook their most ambitious cloning project to date, not just duplicating a man, but redesigning him. Accelerated aging, obedience programming, rigorous training regimens, and unbeknownst to the Jedi, something far more sinister. What secret was hidden in every clone that made them loyal not to the Jedi, but to their destroyer? Buried inside each clone was a microscopic implant, the inhibitor chip. Officially described as behavioural safeguard, its true purpose was far more disturbing. Programmed by agents of Darth Sidious, through his apprentice Count Dooku, the chip contained Order 66, a coded directive to exterminate the Jedi. It lay dormant for years, invisible even to the Jedi who commanded the army, until the fateful day it was activated. In a single instant, loyalty shifted. Brothers in arms became executioners. The Jedi fell in droves. The Kaminoans, whether aware of the full implications or not, had engineered the perfect betrayal. Their clones had functioned flawlessly. Their contract was fulfilled. So why did the Empire return? Not in gratitude, but with fire and fury. When Vice Admiral Rampart ordered an orbital bombardment of Tipoca City, under secret orders from Governor Tarkin, Kaminoan civilization was wiped out in a single night. Buildings, laboratories, databanks, and citizens gone, swallowed by the sea that had once nearly destroyed them. But this wasn't just an act of military restructuring. This was surgical erasure. The Empire didn't merely decommission the cloning program. It eliminated every trace of Kaminoan science, history, and knowledge. Why? Because Kamino represented something the Empire could not control: independent innovation. The Kaminoans had built an army for the Republic. They could do it again, for someone else. Their secrets were a threat. But perhaps more chillingly, what else did they know that the Empire couldn't risk surviving? To outsiders, Kaminoan cities looked sterile and lifeless. But to Kaminoan eyes, evolved to perceive ultraviolet light, these cities were alive with colour, meaning, and memory. Buildings like Tipoca City and Durham City were painted in ultraviolet dyes invisible to human vision. To the Kaminoans, every wall was a canvas, every corridor a story. Visitors walked through seemingly blank hallways, unaware of the vibrancy all around them. And buried beneath the waves, deeper still, were ruins of their older cities, abandoned settlements like Durham, whose foundations may predate even Tipoca itself. In the wake of the Great Sith War, one Jedi Master, Qualsneak the Bull, hid a trove of Jedi artifacts in Durham City. Its precise location remains unknown, lost beneath the oceans. But its mention suggests something staggering. Kamino may have once been far more connected to galactic history than we ever realized. Kamino's isolation didn't just produce science, it produced myth. In one legend, the oceans were ruled by a powerful god beast named Protoss, who defied the migration of the Aiwa, Kamino's majestic flying sea creatures. We see Obi-Wan Kenobi ride one of these during the Clone Wars. When Protoss prevented them from reaching warmer waters, a sacrifice by one of the Aiwa doomed the god and saved their kind. Scholars interpret this tale as an allegory for Kamino's own history, Protoss representing the prideful pre-flood civilization, and the Aiwa symbolising adaptability and survival. But there's more. Some believe the Kaminoans may have cloned the Aiwa themselves, possibly blending DNA from other aquatic creatures like the Fambass of Naboo. If true, it would mark one of the earliest known cases of interplanetary bioengineering, a chilling testament to the depth of Kamino's experimentation. What other hybrid creatures, forgotten or undiscovered, might still lurk in Kamino's drowned ruins? When the Empire bombarded Kamino, they didn't just destroy a facility, they destroyed a culture, one of the most advanced genetic civilizations the galaxy had ever known. Their cities lie beneath the waves, their data erased, their people scattered, missing, or dead. But the mystery remains. What knowledge did they take with them to the depths? Were there hidden programs beyond the Grand Army of the Republic? Were there clones we never saw? Experiments locked away in hidden labs, waiting? Kamino created the perfect soldiers, but perfection came at a price. And in the end, the very empire that benefited from their brilliance chose to bury them, so no one else ever could. But what do you think? Should the Empire have utilised Kamino and kept the clone army? What kind of man would willingly return to the place of his greatest defeat? Most would flee it, bury it, pretend it never happened. But not Darth Vader. He chose Mustafar, the very planet where his body was broken, where Anakin Skywalker died, and Vader was born in flame and agony. He claimed it as his home. Why? To answer that, we must trace the origins of what Mustafar truly was, long before Vader made it his fortress world. A world whose wounds went far deeper than the lava that flows through it. Mustafar was not just a fiery mining world. Beneath its burning rivers lay something far more ancient, a Sith shrine, long buried and pulsating with dark energy. Long ago, the dark side itself had twisted the planet's very ecosystem. Mustafar was once lush and vibrant, but a Sith ritual corrupted the Bright Star, a powerful artifact that maintained planetary harmony, plunging the world into endless volcanic torment. This location was no accident. When the Techno-Union's assets were nationalized after the Clone Wars, Mustafar came under Imperial control, and Palpatine, master of dark secrets, offered the planet to his apprentice. Why would Sidious want Vader to settle on a world drenched in his trauma? The answer lies in the Sith path to power. Pain is a crucible, and Palpatine believed that Mustafar, sight of Anakin Skywalker's fall, would continue to fuel Vader's hatred, his suffering. To build his sanctuary, Vader enlisted the help of Darth Momin, a Sith architect whose consciousness was trapped in a mask. Momin's twisted genius designed Fortress Vader, a black monolith constructed directly over the ancient Sith shrine. But Momin had a secret agenda. The fortress's structure acted like a tuning fork for the dark side, designed to pierce reality and open a gateway to the Force beyond death. But to what end? For Vader, the goal was singular: to bring Padme Amidala back from the dead. Within Fortress Vader, Momin's gateway briefly worked. Vader glimpsed into the netherworld of the Force. He walked a surreal vision, where he was confronted by echoes of the past. Obi-Wan, Palpatine, and finally, Padme herself. But when he reached out to her, she turned away. He had gone too far. In this moment, Vader realized a devastating truth. She was beyond his reach, and always would be. But the fortress remained, a place of darkness, a throne of agony, and soon a tomb of the Empire. So what became of Mustafar under Imperial rule? It became a dumping ground for secrets. The Inquisitorius brought captured Jedi and Force-sensitive children here, torturing them, converting them, or disposing of them. The planet became the unofficial graveyard of Order 66. The mining guild operated under strict surveillance, but profit waned. Even Black Sun, the notorious criminal syndicate, abandoned the planet once the Imperial garrison took control. And yet, the native Mustafarians refused to go quietly. The Mustafarians had long watched their world be desecrated. Once peaceful lava herders and molten miners, they were pushed to the brink by centuries of off-world exploitation. First by the Techno-Union, then the Empire. But when Fortress Vader was erected atop the sacred Sith site, it was not just industry, it was spiritual violation. To the native Mustafarians, the planet itself was alive. They revered its rhythms, its fire, its breath. Vader's arrival was a perversion of that, and so they resisted, not with fleets, but with fire. Using ancient weapons, lava-forged blades, and environmental sabotage, Mustafarian rebels launched several insurrections against the fortress. In one major assault, they nearly breached its outer sanctum. These skirmishes spread across cavern networks, ash-covered plains, and lava tube hideouts, were desperate and courageous. But Vader was more than mortal. He cut down entire battalions with terrifying precision. The fortress held. The Mustafarians' efforts were buried in flame. Still, their resistance marked them as among the few native peoples in the galaxy who dared rise up against the Empire on their own soil, and paid the price in blood and cinders. To understand Mustafar's long torment, we must go back to a time before Vader, before the Empire, before even the Sith rituals. The Bright Star was more than a relic. It was the planet's beating heart, a force-attuned crystalline object located within the sanctum of Lady Corvax, an ancient force wielder from Mustafar's forgotten past. The bright star maintained planetary harmony, regulating geothermal flow, volcanic activity, and even the planet's fragile spiritual balance. But when Lady Corvax tried to use it to resurrect her fallen husband, the star was corrupted. The failed ritual tore a rift through the force and shattered Mustafar's ecosystem. Verdant fields burned, the skies turned to ash, lava overtook the forests, and the bright star was sealed away in shame beneath the planet's crust. Centuries later, during Vader's reign, a descendant of Lady Corvax, the Black Bishop, attempted to retrieve it, but it was ultimately destroyed during a final confrontation between Vader and the ancient guardians of the Bright Star. With its destruction, the centuries-long corruption began to recede. Mustafar began to heal. The forests, once thought lost, sprouted again. Life returned to the air. For the first time in generations, the world began to breathe. But it wasn't just nature awaking. The Force was stirring. In the decades following Vader's death, a new darkness took root. They called themselves the Cult of Vader, a splinter group of darkside zealots, Sith worshippers, and twisted war relic scavengers who believed Vader was the true chosen one. To them, he wasn't just a Sith Lord, he was a god. They journeyed to Fortress Vader's ruins, constructing shrines from melted metal and shattered lightsabers. They prayed in silence, meditated in the heat, and conducted bizarre rituals, hoping to commune with Vader's lingering essence through the darkside nexus beneath the fortress. Some members bore cybernetic scars in mockery of Vader's wounds. Others adorned themselves with relic armor styled after his design. They guarded the fortress with fanaticism, defending it from tomb raiders and Jedi hunters alike. It was into this twisted temple that Kylo Ren walked decades later. But before he could enter the fortress and claim his destiny, he encountered a creature out of legend. That something was the Eye of Webbish Bog. Sometime after his duel with Luke Skywalker on Cloud City, Darth Vader travelled to Mustafar in search of answers, specifically about the mysterious machinations of Emperor Palpatine, whom he had begun to suspect of keeping secrets. But as he confronted Ochi of Bestoon, an assassin sent by Sidious to punish him, Vader was interrupted, not by Ochi, but by a presence calling him through the Force. The Eye. Who is shouting so insistently? The Eye demanded from deep within a lava cave. The Eye, a mysterious, parasitic entity conjoined with a giant blind host, was no mere oracle. It mocked Vader from afar, riddling him with philosophical questions. Did he truly seek answers? Did he know the questions? Did he think rage alone could solve the mysteries of the Force? As Vader was attacked by lava fleas and forced into combat, the Eye taunted him, sending Force-induced visions of Obi-Wan, Luke, and Palpatine, echoes of his past mistakes and future doubts. When he demanded to know the Eye's allegiance, whether it served Sidious, the Eye laughed again. "Do you know what you want, or what you need?" it asked, blurring the lines between vision, test, and truth. In one final confrontation, the Eye shifted the appearance of the giant to resemble Anakin, Luke, and Palpatine in turn, asking Vader, "If you were chosen, would anyone care what you choose?" Vader, undaunted, made his choice clear. You will care. And so, the Eye revealed what Vader sought. A navigational device encoded with the coordinates to Exegol, the hidden world of the Sith. As it handed the artifact to Vader, the Eye left him with one final mystery. Had he passed the test, or failed it? Decades later, in 35 ABY, the Eye of Webbish Bog re-emerged. Supreme Leader Kylo Ren, driven by voices and visions of Emperor Palpatine's return, came to Mustafar in search of Vader's Wayfinder. The world had begun healing. Forests had sprouted in places once drowned in lava, but resistance remained. Kylo and his stormtroopers fought through the Alasmic of Winzes, a dark cult guarding the sacred ruins. But it was at Corvix Fen, in the shadow of ancient Sith ruins, where Kylo found what he truly sought. From the black waters of the hidden lake, the Eye of Webbish Bog emerged once more, perched atop the blind, massive host. It greeted Kylo calmly and stated, "You have what you seek." When Kylo attempted a Jedi mind trick, the Eye laughed, immune to such manipulation, and revealed that Vader had once charged it with guarding the Wayfinder. Only those who proved themselves worthy by defeating the Protectors could receive it. Kylo retrieved the Wayfinder, but the Eye warned him, Mustafar burns deception. If he continued down this path, he would encounter his true self. And as quickly as it had appeared, the Eye and its host vanished into the waters, leaving no ripple, as if they'd never existed at all. Today, Mustafar stands as a symbol, a scar on Galaxy's history. The ruins of Fortress Vader still whisper, but the world itself is healing, slowly, and the Force still moves through it, echoing with the pain, power, and passion of one man's fall and the legacy that followed. But will Mustafar ever truly forget the shadow of the Sith? Or is its fate forever tied to the fire that birthed Vader? Why did the Empire send its most elite stormtroopers to obliterate a research station buried in an asteroid field light years from the galactic hyperlanes? On the surface, Polis Massa looked like nothing more than a backwater archaeological outpost, remote, quiet, and insignificant. But beneath the rock and silence lay a far more dangerous truth. Hidden among the shattered remnants of a once living world, Polis Massa held secrets powerful enough to threaten the Emperor's new regime. To understand why Darth Vader and the 501st Legion turned their blasters on this unassuming world, we first have to go back centuries, before the Clone Wars, before the Republic even understood the mysteries buried in the Outer Rim. But what did the Empire fear finding there? In 519 BBY, long before the Empire rose, a race called the Caladan left their homeworld of Caladan and settled in the Subterrel sector, taking refuge among the fragments of a planet shattered by some unknown catastrophe. These beings, highly intelligent, skeletal appearance, and driven by scientific obsession, established the Polis Massa research base. Why here? Because deep within one of the largest asteroids, they found the remains of a city, an ancient civilization known only as Alien. The discovery of the lost city of Wayenta in 59 BBY sparked a frenzy of archaeological activity. The Caladan believed the Alien might be their ancestors, and they launched a desperate effort to reconstruct them using recovered tissue, pushing the bounds of cloning and ethical science. But the project would have consequences far beyond the realm of science, because the excavation wasn't just unearthing bones. It was waking ghosts of a past the Jedi couldn't ignore. Why would a civilization so advanced be wiped out in silence? During the final days of the Clone Wars, Polis Massa stood on the edge of the galaxy, far from any major hyperspace lanes, perfect for those needing to vanish. After Order 66 obliterated the Jedi across the galaxy, It became a last refuge. When Yoda, Bail Organa, and Obi-Wan Kenobi escaped the slaughter, they chose Polis Massa as the safest haven to regroup. It was here, in the colony's hidden medical bay, that Padme Amidala gave birth to the twins, Luke and Leia. It was also here that Obi-Wan first heard the voice of Qui-Gon Jinn, reaching out from the netherworld of the Force. With the guidance of Yoda and the teachings of the ancient Jedi Master, Obi-Wan and Yoda began sacred training to retain their identity in the Force beyond death, a technique no Jedi had mastered since Jinn's discovery. But this hidden base didn't stay secret forever. What trail led the Empire straight to its doorstep? Not long after the Republic fell, the Emperor's agents began rooting out Jedi survivors. Among them was Inquisitor Malorum, a fallen Jedi turned Imperial hunter, dispatched to investigate rumors surrounding Padme's death and her last known location. His investigation led him to Polis Massa. Here, Malorum discovered the truth about the birth of the twins, about the presence of the Jedi, and about the hidden past of Caladan. But before he could deliver it to Vader, his fellow Inquisitor, Sankor, confronted Obi-Wan Kenobi at the Polis Massa research base. The duel was swift, Sankor fell, and Kenobi vanished once more. But the secret had been uncovered, and with that, the gloves came off. How far would the Empire go to ensure the secrets of Polis Massa stayed buried? The time for shadow play was over. Vader dispatched the 501st Legion, the infamous Vader's Fist, to raise the research facility and destroy the rebel presence that had quietly taken root there. Polis Massa had become a living record of the Republic's final moments, housing clues to the Skywalker lineage and Jedi survival. By the time the 501st arrived, they weren't just executing another raid. According to their own war diaries, they were growing tired of the rebellion, but Polis Massa was different. The rebels here were coordinated. They were multi-species, well-equipped, and embedded deep within the asteroid complex, using AAC-1 tanks, FX medical droids, and long-forgotten Jedi escape routes. But what exactly were they protecting? In 0 BBY, as the construction of the Death Star neared completion, the rebellion scrambled to uncover the Empire's most terrifying secret. The plans, vital schematics capable of revealing the battle station's weaknesses, were transmitted in a coded signal from Scarif, eventually reaching none other than Polis Massa. Yes, this distant world, once home to whispers of the Force and the cries of newborn Skywalkers, was now the node of the most dangerous data leak in galactic history. But how did such a remote outpost receive the signal? As it turns out, Botton's spies stationed at Polis Massa were part of an expanding rebel intelligence network. These elite agents, experts in infiltration and espionage, had already begun embedding themselves within critical listening posts. When the signal arrived, they knew the Empire would track it, so they crafted a decoy, preparing a forgery of the plans and scrambling the transmission trail. The real data, it was quietly forwarded to the Tantive 4, Princess Leia's corvette. But would the deception buy enough time? As expected, Vader acted swiftly. Enraged by the leak, he ordered the 501st Legion to storm the asteroid complex and obliterate every trace of the rebel presence. The 501st had faced traitors before, but the rebels of Polis Massa were different. They fought like ghosts with nothing to lose. From hidden hangars, AAC-1 speeder tanks emerged under low gravity, hurling volleys across the vacuum-covered walkways. Wookiee archers stationed along internal corridors laid ambush after ambush, while Botton agents coordinated defense through scrambled internal comms. Even the medical FX series droids were reprogrammed to serve as sentries and saboteurs. The Caledahan themselves, pacifists by nature, did not fight, but their excavations had hollowed out kilometers of interconnected tunnels beneath the asteroid surface. The rebels used them to maneuver, retreat, and collapse paths behind them. But even this resistance couldn't last forever. Why was the Empire so determined to scorch the place rather than occupy it? The answer was more than just the Death Star plans. As the Empire pushed deeper into the asteroid, they began uncovering signs of the Alien ruins, and more disturbingly, the cloning experiments the Caledahan had initiated using recovered alien tissue. These efforts were more than science. They bordered on the unnatural, and to the Sith, perhaps even heretical. Remember, the Sith sought control over life and death, and anything that offered rival knowledge, even from ancient alien species, posed a philosophical threat to their dominion. It's possible Palpatine ordered Polis Massa destroyed, not just to eliminate rebels, but to erase a competing path to power rooted in ancient, non-Force civilizations. The Caledahan were so secretive, even within the Republic, that their excavation reports were almost entirely unknown to the greater galaxy. And as the 501st overran the rebel outpost, they planted charges throughout the local dig, destroying centuries of archaeological history. But what was lost in those catacombs that might have changed everything? The final stand came at the medical facility where Padme had once given birth, a haunting parallel. Now, the rebels were surrounded, with Imperial forces storming every hallway, but the Bottons had succeeded. The fake data was discovered too late. The real Death Star plans were already en route via Leia. With their mission complete, the remaining rebels made a last stand, not to survive, but to buy every last second they could. According to the 501st's own war diary, many of them began to sense a shift. This wasn't a mere insurrection. These rebels had a purpose, a cause. They weren't scattered traitors. They were becoming an alliance. Vader would later reflect on the delays at Polis Massa as one of the reasons Leia's ship escaped capture for crucial hours. A delay that allowed Obi-Wan and Luke to begin their journey on Tatooine. In that sense, the sacrifice of Polis Massa's defenders wasn't in vain. But what became of the Caledahan? After the assault, the Polis Massa colony was left in ruin. The 501st pulled out, mission complete. Any surviving Caledahan vanished into obscurity. Some believe a few escaped using the same pods that once carried Yoda to exile on Dagobah. Others think they returned to Caladan, abandoning their dreams of resurrecting the Alien. But the world they built, a haven for Jedi, a cradle for legends, and a tomb for ancient civilizations, was never rebuilt. Today, the shattered remains of Polis Massa drift forgotten in the void, a ghost of history. But for those who know where to look, its story still echoes. Because Polis Massa, the world that birthed hope and was silenced by fear, stands as one of the last true battlegrounds of the Clone Wars legacy, and the first battlefield of the galactic civil war. Perhaps, buried beneath the asteroid dust and forgotten temples, lie answers to questions the Jedi never dared to ask. Why would the Empire annihilate an ancient holy city devoted to peace? A single flash of light, brighter than the twin moons of Jedha, marked the end of a civilization older than the Jedi Order itself. The holy city, once a place of serene pilgrimage and spiritual learning, was reduced to molten ash in moments. But why? Why would the Empire unleash its wrath upon a seemingly insignificant moon? A backwater world with no major fleet, no known military presence, and no political sway in the Senate. The answer lies not in what Jedha had in the present, but what it had represented in the past. This is the tragic past of Jedha, a planet once known as the Kyber Heart, a cradle of Force devotion and a symbol of resistance against tyranny, and it all began long before the Jedi ever set foot on it. Before we speak of destruction, we must first understand reverence. Long ago, even before the rise of the Republic, Jedha stood as one of the oldest known locations where beings across the galaxy gathered to worship the Force. While Coruscant may have been the political capital, Jedha was a spiritual beacon, believed by many to be one of the very first places where the Force touched the galaxy. But what made Jedha so sacred? The answer may lie in its deep subterranean vaults of Kyber crystals, those rare, Force-attuned minerals that served as the heart of every Jedi lightsaber. These crystals weren't just valuable resources, they were living conduits of the Force. So, what made Jedha different from other Force-attuned worlds like Ilum or Ahch-To? It was pluralism. Unlike the Jedi, who interpreted the Force through a specific doctrine, Jedha became a home for many Force-worshipping sects. As thousands made pilgrimage to Jedha, a mosaic of Force-based traditions blossomed across its dusty streets. From the disciples of the Wills, who recorded the mysteries of the Force in sacred texts, to the enigmatic guardians of the Wills, protectors of the Temple of Kyber who wielded no lightsabers, but believed deeply in the Force's will. The city teemed with spiritual devotion. Shurat Imwe and Baze Malbus, who would later play vital roles in the rebellion, were among the last of these guardians. The diversity of beliefs didn't lead to conflict, it led to harmony. Jedha was a rare nexus where different Force philosophies coexisted in peace. But with Kyber came danger. Could this spiritual jewel truly remain untouched by the ambitions of war? That answer came during the Clone Wars. While Jedha tried to remain neutral, the growing violence of the Clone Wars couldn't be ignored. As Republic and Separatist battles grew bloodier across the galaxy, the importance of Kyber crystals drew more eyes to the planet. Jedha's Kyber mines became a subject of intense interest, especially for the Republic's Jedi Order. Although the Jedi did not rule Jedha, they were frequently present, observing, meditating, and in some cases, recruiting potential Force sensitives from the many sects who lived there. But as the Republic morphed into the Empire, that interest turned from reverence to exploitation. So what did the Empire really want from Jedha? When the Empire rose, they came not as pilgrims, but as conquerors, claiming to preserve order. Imperial forces swiftly occupied Jedha under the authority of Governor Tarkin and later Director Orson Krennic. Stormtroopers marched through sacred temples and heavy equipment tore through ancient bedrock. But what were they really digging for? The answer, we now know, was Kyber. Vast quantities of crystal were being extracted in secret and funneled directly to the construction of the Empire's ultimate weapon, the Death Star. To the people of Jedha, this desecration wasn't just about resources. It was about the erasure of their fate. Resistance simmered under the surface, and extremist groups like Saw Gerrera's partisans began striking back. Which begs the question, was Jedha's fate sealed not just because of its crystals, but because of its spirit of rebellion? Saw Gerrera's partisans were not like the mainstream Rebel Alliance. They were radical, violent, and willing to sacrifice anything to strike at the Empire. From his hidden base, carved into the moon's rocky cliffs, Saw launched bombings, ambushes, and raids against Imperial convoys, right in the heart of the Holy City. The Empire responded with brutal crackdowns, executing suspected collaborators and enforcing strict martial law. but nothing could stop the underground resistance from growing. When Jyn Erso was brought to Jedha by Cassian Andor, she witnessed firsthand the fractured resistance and her father's message. The Death Star was near completion, and Jedha was its proving ground. But how does one test a superweapon without revealing its full power? The answer was horrifying. With Tarkin and Krennic locked in a power struggle over control of the Death Star, Krennic made a chilling choice. Fire a single reactor blast from the Death Star on Jedha City. Not enough to destroy the moon, but enough to make a point. In an instant, centuries of history, religion, and culture were annihilated. The towering temple of Kyber was vaporized. Sacred texts lost. Millions of pilgrims, priests, and citizens obliterated in the blink of an eye. Shurit and Baze narrowly escaped. Jyn and Cassian barely outran the blast. But for Jedha, the damage was done. The moon's surface cracked. The once glowing heart of Force devotion was turned into a crater of smoke and dust. But what happened after? Was that the end of Jedha's story? Even after the destruction of the Holy City, Jedha would not die. The moon's atmosphere was irreparably damaged, creating permanent storms and unbreathable zones. But survivors remained. The ruins of the Holy City became a rallying cry for Force believers and rebels alike. The partisans, though weakened, continued fighting in the shadows. Pilgrims still came, fewer now and more cautiously, but they still came. Some believed Jedha had become even more sacred in its suffering. During the reign of the First Order, maps still marked Jedha as a dead world, but legends whispered that its Force energy had intensified, that the destruction had created a wound in the Force that some Seekers tried to reach. So was Jedha's tragedy truly the end, or just a transformation? Jedha may have been broken, its people scattered, its temples destroyed, but its spirit endured, in the Guardians of the Wills, in the Kyber crystals hidden across the galaxy, in the rebellion it helped ignite, and in the memory of those who still believe in the Force. Because the Force is not confined to buildings or borders. It lives in fate. It lives in sacrifice. It lives in hope. And hope, like the Force, can never be fully destroyed. But what do you think? Did you know of the many Force cults on Jedha? The secrets of Exegol could be enough to bring the Jedi to their knees. Welcome back to Secrets of the Galaxy Sunday, where we decode the mysteries of a galaxy far, far away. Today, we descend into a place long thought to be legend, a world of perpetual storm, ruled by shadows and veiled from the Force itself. This is Exegol, the Sith's hidden world, the last bastion of the dark side, and possibly the most dangerous location in all of Star Wars. But how did a place so well hidden become the crucible of Sith resurrection, dark science, and planetary destruction? What ancient power built this world, and could it rise again? Let's dive deep into the darkest corner of the galaxy. Hidden within the chaotic lattice of the unknown regions, Exegol wasn't mapped on any Republic chart, nor was it known to most Sith Lords throughout galactic history. Its existence was safeguarded by a maze of hyperspace anomalies so deadly that only a Sith Wayfinder, infused with ancient darkside knowledge, could lead the way. But what lay beyond those shifting corridors? Why was Exegol cloaked in a storm and silence for thousands of years? First canonized in The Rise of Skywalker, and expanded upon in the Rise of Skywalker Visual Dictionary, Exegol was the sanctum sanctorum of the Sith Eternal, a site of Sith cultism that predates even Darth Bane's rule of two. The planet was chosen for its unnatural alignment with the dark side of the Force, a focal point of dark energy that seemed to exist outside the natural order. And deep beneath its ashen surface, the Sith Eternal constructed a world unlike any other. But who were the Sith Eternal? And why were they never mentioned by Sith Lords like Plagueis, Bane, or Vader? The Sith Eternal were not part of the mainstream Sith lineage that followed the rule of two. They were an offshoot, an ultra-secretive cult composed of Sith loyalists, zealots, alchemists, engineers, prophets, and fanatics who believed in the eventual resurrection of Sith dominance through ritual, science, and bloodline. According to the Visual Dictionary and the novelization of The Rise of Skywalker, the Sith Eternals survived in isolation on Exegol for millennia, preserving forbidden lore, conducting experiments, and slowly building a hidden civilization entirely devoted to the return of the Sith Empire. Wearing red ceremonial robes and chanting in Sith dialects, the cult oversaw cloning labs, shipyards, and shrines devoted to the ancient Sith deities. Their ultimate mission? To restore the Sith to absolute galactic control by forging a living embodiment of Sith legacy. They weren't just trying to bring back Palpatine, they were trying to build a dark messiah. When Darth Sidious was cast into the abyss by Anakin Skywalker aboard the Death Star 2, his physical body was obliterated, but his spirit, corrupted, wrathful, and steeped in ancient Sith alchemy, survived the fall. According to the novelization and Star Wars Secrets of the Sith, Palpatine had long prepared for death. Through Sith rituals and technology, he created clone bodies on Exegol as possible vessels for his soul. One of these became his new host, but the vessel was imperfect. It could not contain his full power, and required constant support from darkside machines and life-sustaining harnesses. But if the body was so frail, how could he lead an empire again? The answer came in the form of legacy. Palpatine's solution was not to remain in his weakened state, but to pass his essence into a body that could hold it. So what role did Rey play in his plan? And why was she so crucial to the Sith Eternal's prophecy? Rey, born of a failed Strandcast, and thus the biological granddaughter of Palpatine, became the centerpiece of his final scheme. By luring her to Exegol and manipulating through despair and rage, Sidious hoped she would strike him down in anger. That act, a symbolic Sith ritual, would allow his essence to pass into her, and through her, the Sith Order would live again. This is why Palpatine says in The Rise of Skywalker, "Strike me down in anger, and my spirit will pass into you. As all the Sith live in me, you will be Empress. We will be one." In essence, Rey was to become the vessel of the Sith Eternal. Not just a darkside convert, but a host for thousands of Sith spirits, including Palpatine himself. But here's where the story gets more unsettling. What if, by killing Palpatine, Rey actually fulfilled the ritual, just not in the way we expected? When Rey uses the power of all the Jedi to reflect Sidious's Force lightning back at him, she doesn't strike in anger. She stands in defiance, calm and centered. She does not give in to hate. Yet some fans have theorized that because she killed him using his own power, she may have inadvertently completed the ritual in a twisted way. This theory, discussed heavily among Star Wars fans, suggests that Palpatine's essence may have partially transferred into Rey. Clues? Her yellow saber, her struggle with identity, and the faint Sith echoes she experiences during her vision on the Death Star 2. Despite rejecting the throne, the dark lineage may still linger within her, waiting. The massive obsidian throne Palpatine sits upon during Rey's arrival was described in The Art of the Rise of Skywalker as a visual representation of ancient Sith prophecy. Modelled on early Macquarie concepts, it was said to be the seat of the last Sith, a prophesied figure who would rule the galaxy, reborn through power and bloodline. This throne wasn't just symbolic. It was intended to bind Rey's will to the Sith spirits, channeling generations of Sith knowledge into a single ruler. It was not just a throne, but a conduit. From the depths of Exegol's underground foundries rose thousands of Zistian-class Star Destroyers, each outfitted with axial superlasers capable of annihilating entire planets. With this force, Palpatine would create a new Sith Empire, with himself, or Rey, as its supreme ruler. The Final Order was meant to be a phoenix born of Empire's ashes, a navy forged in secret, unbound by the treaties of the New Republic, and blessed by ancient Sith prophecy. So what happened after Rey's victory? Did Exegol collapse into the void, or does something still remain? During the climactic battle, the Resistance, joined by an enormous civilian fleet, launched a full-scale assault. Lando Calrissian, piloting the Millennium Falcon, coordinated the attack, while ground forces targeted Exegol's navigation towers. When Palpatine was destroyed, a massive eruption of dark energy caused the Sith Citadel to collapse. Most of the Final Order was decimated, and the fleet fell into chaos. The Resistance declared victory. But here's the catch. Exegol itself was never truly destroyed. While the temple was shattered, and many cultists killed, the planet remains. As revealed in interviews and the visual dictionary, many of the secrets, like hidden laboratories, Sith scriptures, and cloning vats, may still lie buried beneath the surface. Could those remnants still be active? Could another dark-side acolyte find them? Exegol was more than a planet. It was a crucible of resurrection, a secret archive of forbidden power, and the final gasp of an ancient religion. But despite its defeat, the darkness there was never truly extinguished. And with the galaxy once again in flux, the question now isn't whether the Sith will return, but whether they ever truly left. If you enjoyed this deep dive, let me know in the comments. Do you think Rey completed the ritual in some unknown way? What other secrets could lie buried beneath Exegol's storms? What if I told you the galaxy's scariest weapon was a former tool of the Jedi Order? Welcome back, Star Wars fans. Today on Secrets of the Galaxy Sunday, we're digging into a world both sacred and scarred. How does a Jedi holy site, steeped in tradition and bathed in the Force, get twisted into a doomsday weapon capable of erasing entire star systems? And even more haunting, how did no one see it coming? Let's unravel the full story of Ilum, the icy world that became Starkiller Base. Long before it was weaponized, Ilum was a sacred ground. But why would the Jedi choose such a hostile, frozen wasteland as a site of pilgrimage? Because deep beneath its icy crust lay something far more precious than warmth. Kyber crystals. These were no ordinary minerals. They were Force attuned, alive in a way most beings couldn't comprehend. They powered lightsabers, but they also revealed truths. And this is where Jedi younglings faced the Gathering, a rite of passage, ancient and personal, where a young Jedi would brave Ilum's treacherous crystal caves, meditating in isolation until one specific crystal called out to them. These caves weren't just tunnels. They were mazes carved in ice, humming with the Force, filled with visions and trials. Ilum was far more than a resource. It was a mirror, showing Jedi who were destined to become. But such power never stays hidden for long. So what happens when the Guardians fall and the Scavengers rise? When the Jedi fell in Order 66, Ilum stood vulnerable. Its Guardians dead or scattered, and its secrets now exposed to darker ambitions. Palpatine knew what the Jedi had long protected. He didn't see Ilum as sacred. He saw it as fuel. Could the crystals that once lit lightsabers also fire a planet-killing beam? The answer lay in the Death Star. The Emperor ordered massive strip mining operations, carving deep scars across Ilum's surface that were visible from orbit. Imperial drills tore through the crust, gouging the planet open, draining its kyber-rich veins. These resources were funneled into the Death Star's superlaser, a weapon that itself echoed the perversion of Ilum's original purpose. But the mining wasn't surgical. It was brutal. The balance of the ecosystem was shattered. Ancient Force harmonies were disrupted. Jedi who returned in secret were hunted by patrols. Ilum was dying, its core bleeding, its spirit broken. But that wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. After the Empire's fall at Endor, you'd think Ilum might find peace. Instead, it fell deeper into darkness. How do you outdo the Death Star? The First Order had an answer. Don't build a weapon. Make one out of a world. The fractured Imperial remnants who fled to the unknown regions didn't forget Ilum. With resources from the unknown regions and knowledge passed down by Sith loyalists, they returned, this time not to mine Ilum, but to convert it. What followed was one of the most horrifying engineering feats in galactic history. The First Order expanded the Imperial trenches into a massive equatorial fissure. This wasn't just a mining anymore, it was the barrel of a superweapon. At the heart of Ilum, they installed a thermal oscillator to regulate and release the energy building inside. But how do you power a weapon this massive? Not by batteries, not by fuel, with stars. The First Order constructed planetary-scale absorption arrays, capable of pulling a sun's energy directly into Ilum's core. When charged, the planet became a hyperspace-accelerated cannon. It didn't just fire at one target, it could fire at many, wiping out entire star systems from light years away. And unlike the Death Star, Starkiller Base was protected by a nearly impenetrable shield. The only way in? A lightspeed entry into the atmosphere itself, one of the riskiest maneuvers ever attempted. Which brings us to the horror. When Starkiller Base fired for the first time, it didn't destroy one world, it destroyed 5. The Hosnian system, the beating heart of the New Republic, gone in an instant. Billions of lives, the Senate, the Republic fleet, all wiped from existence while the entire galaxy watched in helpless horror. But this is not all that made Starkiller Base even more terrifying than the Death Star. Its range. The beam tore through hyperspace, striking across vast distances without warning. It wasn't just the power, it was the unpredictability. No system was safe, and with its shields active, it seemed unstoppable. But there was still one weakness. Time was short. If Starkiller Base charged again, the resistance would be finished. Led by General Leia Organa, the Resistance launched a desperate attack. Here's how it happened. Han Solo, Chewbacca and Finn infiltrated the base to disable the shields manually, using Captain Phasma's codes against her. Poe Dameron and a squadron of X-Wings launched an assault on the surface, targeting the oscillator inside the Equatorial Trench. Rey and Finn confronted Kylo Ren, who had just committed one of the saga's most personal and tragic murders. Their duel in the snowy forest echoed with pain and prophecy. Poe flew deep into the trench, bypassing defences, and struck the oscillator's core, setting off a chain reaction. Ilum, now Starkiller Base, began to collapse. The stolen energy of the star, once bound and weaponized, turned against its prison. As the planet broke apart, the sun reignited, casting light once more on a system nearly lost to darkness. But not all was saved. Ilum, the sacred Jedi world, was gone. What's the cost of turning a holy place into a weapon? Ilum's story is one of transformation, but not the kind the Jedi taught. It transformed from a sanctuary into a graveyard, from a place of growth into a machine of death. Its destruction didn't just mark the end of a weapon, it marked the loss of a piece of Jedi history that could never be restored. Could Ilum ever have been saved, or was it doomed the moment the Jedi left it unprotected? Was the fall of Ilum one of the greatest tragedies of the Jedi? And what does the story tell us about the balance between power and peace? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss another deep dive into the lore of the galaxy far, far away. Thanks for watching.